2024 council. Did they miss my 5 o'clock, Joe?
You say?
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. We're here in the town council chambers in Orono. Welcome to those of you joining online and those attending in person, and staff and councilors. We have for roll call, we have Councilor Larway, Councilor Baker, Councilor Powers, Councilor Demerit, Councilor Kenny. I'm certain we'll have Councilor Marks momentarily, and Councilor Berthel is not going to be able to join us today. First of all, we're going to do a council budget workshop. We're going to schedule this. Cornell and I talked about it earlier today. We'll leave the council and town manager pieces last so we can work through staff. So we'll do, I think, reconfigure the order so we can have staff input and then send staff on their way once they're done talking about their pieces, if that makes sense after the overview. In terms of the committee items, I'm hopeful that really want to get through budget conversations within 90 minutes today, and then turn we have a couple of quick finance operations committee matters that we added to the agenda so we can keep some of these things moving along, which are time sensitive. With the hope that we can still shoot for a 7 o'clock end of the meeting tonight. So we'll wrap the budget conversations up around 6:30. And we are for folks who may be joining us to talk about the Performing Arts Festival coordination, we are going to try and shoot for 6:45 for that conversation so folks can join us. So you missed my 5 o'clock somewhere, Joe.
You didn't really miss it.
Okay,
You're not gonna sit.
I find myself far more on
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
thanks, sorry, good night.
Third time was a charm on that one, so. Lori, we have budget binders for members of the public, if you want to follow along, it's not like the library though, you can't take it with you, you gotta leave it here. Yep, but thank you. So with that, Cornell, turn it over to you for just to preface this, we've got the interim town manager, we've got Zach's first budget, where we have a vacancy of the assistant town manager job, and our administrative assistant, the town manager's office is brand new. So they've done a remarkable job, I think, putting this binder together for us. Very grateful for the work that's gone into it and the willingness to help us understand where we go from here. So Cornell, do you want to kick it off?
So we have before you the fiscal year 25 Orono municipal budget. Orono operations expenses are up roughly 7% over last year. And the school assessment is estimated to go up 10.8%. The Penobscot County assessment is up 6.44%. But even with those increases, we estimate the tax rate to increase only 2.68%. The mill rate increasing 0.63 mils from 2340 to 2403. And that's due in large part to the 25% increase in state municipal revenue sharing. We also added 18 million in new value for the total town valuation, so that's also improved it. Some highlights: the finance department's up 30-some%, and that's due in large part to moving the new position of HR payroll clerk from town manager's line, and was funded for a half a year into the finance for a full year with salary and benefits. The debt spreadsheet on page C in the additional info, disregard that. We have some issues with that. We're redoing that, and I will get you a new one on that this week. In IT, the big increase, 62% increase, is due to the consulting fees going from 35,000 to 78,000. Assessing increase 30-some% due to legal bills. Just paid a legal bill today was 40,000. So legal bills and the assessing contract renewal increase on that. Police and fire are both up roughly 12%, and that's due to wage and benefit increases. The Public Works Environmental has a 17% increase, and that's due because of the automated side load contract is a full year. So that went from 143,000 to 295,000. As I mentioned, the increase in state municipal revenue sharing for revenues. EMS patient billing is up some 40,000. Excise taxes up 2.6%. In the capital improvements plan, you'll notice pretty significant spending, $3.356 million, which is roughly 1.2 million over last year. But in the capital plan, the 3.3 million is from the capital equipment is 595,000. The capital infrastructure is 2.219 million. The capital facilities is 223,500, and the capital reserve funding is 318,000. And that's where the $3,356,700 comes from. And in that funding, we're taking over $1 million from the reserve to fund projects. Included in that is the Webster fund, and that you mentioned last week about that does draw it down. It does draw it down to 140,000 roughly. That was apparently planned. That was in the plan to do that. From the previous Public Works Director mentioned that was the plan to draw it down. So, finally, I would mention that we had a miscommunication on page numbering. Page numbering is off. But we can and have page number to file. So if you want to leave your budget books, we can run to budget for each of you and it'll have page numbers. I mean, some have page numbers, but we can do it right from the beginning and it would make it easier to follow along if the number page, and I apologize for that, but we can get you that.
Cornell, did you number them sequentially the whole way through, or were they
Yes.
numbered just by section, like within each section 1 to 20, or and then start over at 1 again?
Page to the, all the way to the end.
Okay, so we can either leave it with you or we can hand number them all through to the end. Okay, which someone here will have to do if I don't do it, right? If I don't do my own, someone else will have to do that.
Oh, it's already done.
It's already reprinting.
No, it's, we'll just run them, but
Okay,
it's in a PDF and he figured out I couldn't do it.
yeah,
Figured out how to page number it. I would write them.
I would love numbers,
Yeah.
but do we need to turn this one in to get numbers, or since we're getting a new one, can we just keep this to keep looking at?
I'll
Well,
give you the whole packet if you want. You can put it in.
yeah, that's good. When is it when they're printed, I'll come get one.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. So I think that's all I have for review. You'll notice two other things. There's a number of spreadsheets following the memo. And on the last tab is additional info, which there are a dozen or so additional info sheets or spreadsheets that the council requested. And I have passed out 2 updates. And as I mentioned, we'll update that.
Oh.
Yes, spreadsheet.
Do you have another update for Sarah's updates?
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna have to read this one with my phone. It's okay. Thank you for, I have to do it at restaurants too. Any,
Gonna say, you know, those glasses on that.
yeah. Matt needs business now, by the way. That's Matt's-
reading glasses.
So I think what we should, so how many different presentations are we gonna have today? I mean, we've just done the overview, the budget summary and tax rate with revenue projections. Is that where we are now? So we're gonna hear
So we're
from,
gonna hear from Shelley, and she has clerk assistance and elections.
okay?
Can we ask questions?
Yeah, I think-
right now?
Yeah, I think we should ask questions of Cornell right now, and then. Yeah, and also, we had a good conversation, Sarah and I met with Zach and Cornell earlier today, to talk about budget timelines and things like that. And some of the work we'll want to do, you know, I see this initial budget as the manager's budget as a presentation from staff to the council, and it's our job to kind of, you know, dig into it, understand it, and understand to the point where we feel comfortable, you know, presenting it to the community and making an informed decision on it. So some of the work that I think we'll do, and I know Sarah's been digging into some things and everything you see kind of towards the, and Leo, I think too, everything you see kind of towards the end of the budget document are kind of new variations of documents that kind of came about from the process we had last year. And my hope is that over the next couple of these sessions, we'll hear from the staff, the departments and things like that, but we'll also formulate what it is that we need to have to be able to communicate to the public about what this budget means, what it, in terms of things about debt service. What do we have? We had debt service, we had
Your data.
5-year data and some things, high level things that we're gonna want to be able to communicate with people. So this is definitely a process and it's not something we're done today. We're just gonna spend 5 weeks going through the stuff we already have. I mean, there'll be some questions and an opportunity to improve this document, but also take from it the high level stuff that we're gonna want to be able to share and communicate with people. And of course, take input from the public. So questions for Cornell? Is that
I
what
had
you
a
want to
couple,
do?
but other people probably do.
Yep.
Colonel, could you just repeat the mill rate change? You mentioned it and I didn't write it down fast enough from last year to this year.
2340 right now, and we project that it'll go to 2403, which is a 0.63 mils increase.
I also wanted to ask in the intro pages, page 5, if we were counting from the front. The new one that we just handed out. I know we haven't had time to look through it and we will before next week. Zach had sent a digital version. I looked at it briefly. Just, I want to sort of call council's attention to this because it's sort of a shorthand for where growth is happening in each department. So you can see that the cost figures down the side under comments kind of delineate not just that we see, for example, in general government, if there's growth of 161,000, this kind of breaks that down as to where that 161,000 is coming from. This is a document I was just very grateful to staff for putting together this year, because it really does provide a way to look quickly at one page and get an overview. There's more details that can be found if you read the individual budget all the way through in the middle section, but I think this for me was really, really helpful. So it was very much appreciated. And I haven't had time to look closely yet. A quick look. Seems like, as we would expect, most of the growth is coming in salary and benefits in most categories. But I mostly wanted to thank staff for this page, which really does provide such an easy way to get a shorthand view and to call council's attention to the fact that this is not something we had last year. This is a new page for us this year, and I think it's very helpful.
I wanted to ask, on the 18 million in new valuation, do we have a sense of how much of that is, new property that's coming to the tax rolls because of development or residential construction or development? How much of that is, someone's house was valued at $200,000 last year and now it's 300,000? Because the first part of that is something I'm excited about. The second part of that's a tougher thing to kind of celebrate. Yeah,
This is an estimate.
yeah,
Commitment doesn't happen until August,
yeah.
right? And so the reality is our assessor kind of looked at things in a general terms to see where that could happen.
Yeah.
I think it's really difficult to say it's because of this or because of that, but we do have some significant projects that are coming to fruition that are new
Mhm.
value. And I don't know where we'll end up as far as additional value added because of market conditions or anything like that. So it's hard to tell right now.
Okay. Is it possible to tell now and when we put this budget to bed, do you think, or do we have to wait till August to kind of really have?
I don't think that, I don't think he'll have that exact information. I guess I don't. You're trying to understand what is brand new value versus what's the other thing you.
Well, just assess, like, we've got particularly, as people's appraisals or not, the assessments go up. Their ability to pay taxes doesn't necessarily go up, particularly people on a fixed income. So we have, I know, Leo and I were talking about it, he had an example, I know we don't, probably maybe don't want to name names in a public meeting, but if someone on a fixed income, an elderly resident on a fixed income, just because, there's 4 houses for sale in Orono and all the economic factors that go into the value. I mean, prices on my street have all gone up over the last couple of years. So is it that, just the housing market and the increases in the housing market are driving up the assessed values? That's, for me, I don't feel good about taxation on shifting the people just because the assessed value of their home goes up. I'm really excited about Tyler technology, you know what I mean?
So there are two pieces to that.
Yeah.
One is there's not a lot of control over what the state requires you to be within 10% of
Yep.
market value.
Yep.
But typically, if it was an increase because of the market, that's going to be an increase across the board, which just makes the pie bigger. So your assessment may be bigger, but everybody's assessment's bigger.
Mhm.
So you could have a higher assessment, but what you pay might be the same. See what I'm saying? Because everything gets bigger, there's more of a pot, and everybody's slice of that pie gets smaller.
Uh-huh.
From a term of that, anything that was added, so if you added a deck, that's technically added value, right? So I think those two things are separate, but typically you don't just take a neighborhood and say, oh, they went up there, but they didn't go up anyplace else.
Mhm.
It's usually looked at, if the market is increased by 20%, the market is increased by 20%, which basically increases the pie, but doesn't necessarily make you, and your assessment will go up to meet that market, but doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes would go up or down. Does that make sense?
Because once we get to August and the commitment, is that what you mean? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the two things are hard to put together because they happen at different times and they have, value is value and there are rules set to create value. But like I said, typically you don't just go and say, oh, well, that's house on that neighborhood, those 3 houses sold, so the one in the middle now needs to go up and nothing else changes. So therefore, they pay more, but nobody else does. When the market changes for everybody. It doesn't really just change for one person.
So this was a very specific, a friend who's 87 years old, their assessment went from 2,800 to 5,100. And it's because of the reeval. But to me, that's a really troubling sign for someone on a fixed income. So it's not valuation changed,
Right.
it's from the reeval, that's how that happened, so. but-
And I know that in that realm, right? That when everything went up, the pie got bigger. So in that, it didn't go all the same amount. It went different depending upon where you were in the cycle and how you were,
Right.
how you had been assessed prior. With that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that their taxes went up.
No, I'm saying their tax bill did go up from 28 to 51.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a specific incident that have deep concerns over, and this isn't really the venue, obviously, but I do have a real concern over people on fixed income that just got walloped from the reeval, and I'm trying to figure out if there's something as a council, but we're not to have that discussion, but I think Dan's point is, I'm excited about the hotel in Tyler and new value added. I'm less excited about taking another pound of flesh out of.
I don't think there's a planned factor increase, across the board factor.
Yeah.
So if they did that, that would affect what you're talking about.
Mhm.
I think most of this is the new building permit value.
No, that's great. I want to feel good about the $18 million number. I just really want to understand it. And if that's the case, I'll feel better about it. So,
But we'll check with the
okay,
assessor to.
okay. Any other questions before we turn it over to Shelley?
Sure.
I have some-
This is more of, I guess, I'm concerned, I want to put that out there. I'm concerned about 7.7% increase in operating budget. I understand where a lot of it comes from. I haven't delved in any deeper, but to me, that's a burden that $1 million increase on a $13 million operating budget is very significant, and I would like to see that significantly less, or at least by a few percentage points. The capital budget 3.3 million. I'm less concerned. I'm less. Again, 55% increase to our capital. We've never, the 2.1 from last year was the highest we had by 20% ever spending on capital. So, just can't, I know where the money's coming from, but I also continue to be concerned about draining our reserves down to 150,000, knowing what we have in front of us for capital. So for me, there would need to be some real emergency to be spending that kind of money, way over what we've ever spent on capital. So I want to put that out there as a concern and point it out to council as I think an area that we really need to dig into and make some hard decisions. Not even just look, I mean, I don't. So that's my comment, I guess, and kind of big picture. This is concerning to me. And hope we're all concerned.
We'll just add the rule of thumb about repairing roads. The longer you wait on repairing a road, the more it costs you.
But I mean, I look at this just like I would look at this. I think we have to live in our means, within our means. So if things get pushed, things get pushed. I mean, you have to do it on how we all live, and we're spending our taxpayer dollars. So I think if a road has to wait and it's gonna be bumpy for another year, I think those are decisions that have to be made. Again, this is a 55% higher than any capital budget we've ever had. We've been down as low as 9 in those last 5 years that we've given 900,000. 2.1 was the largest by 20% ever that I've seen in the 5 years, and I assume this last 5 years have been the highest. So, I mean, to make this kind of jump to 3.3 million, I've got major concerns with.
And just for everyone else's benefit on council, following Leo's numbers, I'm going to point out again that you too can see those numbers Leo was talking about. If you go to your additional information section in that lovely item B that Cornell and Zach just handed out.
Yeah.
This is where you can also see, not every year. I don't know. Leo has a long memory here in town. So when he says never, I don't know how many years back Leo means, but you here can see back to 2018. So you can see data spent. If you look at the fourth line down, it's yellow. It gives you capital expenses over time. So back in 2018, you can see 1.4 million. You can see hovering around that. And Leo's quoting a figure of 900. I guess that was FY21. And last few years, we've been at 1.7, 2.1, this year we got 3.3. But I will say, Leo, that I also do think that there are some projects that are so big that they're going to put us in this realm whenever they come due to be done. And they're going to happen at certain points in time. I don't know what the full cost on the Webster project was. Cornell probably knows, but it was 1 point something all by itself. Right. So all by itself, that project is already at that fee. And at some point that project has to be done. So whether that's this year or another year, it's going to spike our numbers when we do it. And I think it is important to realize that those bigger projects will spike numbers unless no other project happens that year, right?
But those are technically 4 projects,
Well,
and it's
Cornell
not
said
all
one,
one
right?
thing. So, but I mean, yeah, I don't want to go.
Yeah,
into
we'll,
this discussion.
we'll get into it.
Yeah,
Anyway.
But I mean, this is pretty plain, and thank you for sharing this. I looked at the one in the back that just went back to 2020, but so believe me, my memory is not that long.
I don't know. You've lived here a lot of years, though. You could be talking back when I was in, you know.
So, and again, I assume these are the highest we've ever done, just because probably in 2017 previously, we probably didn't. You know, you might take a bond or something like that, and that gets broken up. So that's different.
There's ARPA
Right,
money
so
in
that's-
F25 too, right?
Yeah, no, I know where the money is coming from,
Yep.
but for budgeting purposes, I think I'm more concerned about what we're spending personally.
So I wanted just to point out too that I know Cornell and Zach are looking into for us as a council, a little more information on how that capital infrastructure reserve gets refunded. how that happens each year, and that will come back to us as a council, I believe, probably next week. Does that sound?
Didn't you share? We're putting 300 in there.
No, that's mostly going to capital equipment reserves and
Yeah.
capital facilities reserve, Leo. That's
It
not
is.
capital.
That's not the,
Talking about the infrastructure.
Right, we still don't have that information.
And then I did confirm from previous public works director that generally 850 for general taxation per year. That is the goal.
not for the reserve though, right? That's for the spend.
Yeah.
That's the spend, not the reserve, just so keeping up with what you're talking about here.
Right, but I think sometimes portions of that 850 would go into
Reserve.
would stay in reserve and not you wouldn't expend the whole 850 per year.
Yeah, so 850 was that number that was, and I think that was a pretty loose, rough calculation, right? By the public works director that said, in order to kind of keep things going and.
It was the
consistent,
number that
you want-
Rob, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I saw he shared with us last year how he did it. It was, this many roads and every eight, so every 15 years, whatever it was. But again, certainly that's a general formula. There are roads that get traveled on way less than other roads. So I mean, that's a good general formula. So it's a general thing, but I think that was, my understanding is that saying this is what you need to spend, not like what you put in reserves.
so that's some info on what's going into reserves, though, Cornell, you think that some of that was on a year when the 850 might not have fully been expended, then some of that would have been put into reserves.
Stayed in reserve, and so that's how you got up to $1,000,001.
Slowly over
Where you're
time,
at
that
now.
built up.
Yeah.
You know how many years, we don't know how long that capital infrastructure reserve has existed, forever, probably. For a long time.
I assume so.
Thanks.
All right, Jerry had other questions?
I think I have one more, but there might be other people with questions. I don't want to monopolize.
I think most of mine get into specific sections and. Yeah, I think at this point I have a lot of questions, but. Yeah, anyways.
Yep.
So the one I have is back at the beginning, Cornell.
Wait, Matt's putting on his glasses.
Matt's going.
Oh, okay, great.
No.
I have a question. No, I'm just teasing Matt.
Okay.
Because I like to.
Cornell, I wanted to look back at the very first pages at page 3, 4, and 6. Just where we're talking about the size of the growth on the operations side. I guess I just want to point out that there's a couple different numbers to look at, and I think it's important as a council that we understand why they appear to be different in different places. So on page 4, if we look at total budget totals, town budget total growth, we see, everyone sees on page 4, there's a black line. Which shows,
Budget affecting tax rate. total?
no,
Yeah.
next one up,
Budget.
town budget totals,
Okay.
because that's before
Yep.
school and county. So here we see a growth number that's telling us 7.33 percent change from FY 24 to 25. I'm assuming that, Cornell's early one cites that figure, basically about 7%. But I do want to point out that figure, you'll see right above it, it has debt service taken out. So our debt service came down this year. And so our debt service coming down is making this number look smaller than it looks in other places in our budget. So if you go to page 6, that's the other page to look at. We can see here, if you look about 6 lines down where it says total operating expenses in bold, then you'll see that showing 7.7 instead of 7.3% growth. And that, if you count up, is still including our debt service, but it's also got TIF added in, which is why that doesn't exactly match the 7.3, because our TIF is changing also. So that's showing us 7.7. I actually think that the most useful number for us as a council is the very top one on this page, which is the 9.17. Because this number is showing us operating expense growth, excluding what's changing in the TIF and excluding what's changing with our debt service. This is actually showing us what our departmental budgets are growing when we don't look at the TIF changes and the debt changes, I think. So I'm guessing, Cornell, I want to be put that out and say, am I missing something there? Is that how we see these three different numbers? Because
Yeah,
I think
I've
it's
been
important,
using a net
right?
figure and this budget or this spreadsheet is a net to show what the tax rate effect will be.
I just meant for council because we don't have any control really over what's happening. Our debt service is gonna come down the way it's gonna come down, right? And it's probably gonna start going up again soon if we bond out any of these various capital projects we're talking about. So we don't really have any control over how those are varying. What we control is this number that really sits at 9.2. So I guess I just want to point that out. It's a scarier number and I don't like that it's a scarier number, but I think it's important that we take a look at it.
And at the same time, we back into that number with the wage, the contracts we approve and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and so it's a tough. My learning from last year's budget, I guess there's a couple of us who were on our first budget cycle at the table. My learning from the budget last year is there's not a whole lot that you can control without doing some draconian things in terms of commitments you've made to staff and stuff like that. So it's sobering that, where you can find opportunities to save. So.
I do have another question. Is the library bond thing, is that figured, that's not even figured
Not
into
even in
this? So on that note, do we not envision bonding this year or not envision having a payment on that bond within this first year or?
But you won't have a payment on this. Not quite exactly sure when you'll go to bond. That depends on. I think Lori will be able to give you an update, because I don't know as they exactly know when they're getting the congressional directed funds, where the architect is on plans. So if you'd have to bond within, another month, which isn't gonna happen for it to first payment fee.
Why, could it be a full year?
For a full year. Principal.
Great. Sarah had one more question, then we're gonna move on to Shelley.
Nobody else does? Okay, the only other one I had, and this actually came from Leo, but I'm gonna use it since you haven't jumped in yet. I just wanted to confirm new positions. You mentioned, Cornell, in your intro section that you're requesting extra position back to Public Works in this budget,
I have to visit.
a half, not a
Well,
full.
to start, it's a.
Yeah.
They'd hire somebody in January, so half the fiscal year.
For Public Works or for the assistant? Okay, so it's a half position.
For this
So
budget.
in the 26 budget, it would be
Full-time.
fully full-time.
Yeah.
So it's a half
So it's
one.
the same with the assistant town manager. It's calculated to start in January. So it'd be a half position. And next year it'd be a full position.
Okay, so a half assistant town manager position, a half Public Works position are the only new ones being added in the
Well,
requested
the
budget.
assistant town manager is in this budget, 24 fiscal year is fully funded.
It
and
was
I-
in our budget this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
I'm
we end-
saying
yeah.
next year, we only funded it from January 1 on.
Okay, so I guess my other question was just, we also though, after the departure of our assistant town manager, we hired some other new positions that weren't in our budget before, or at least one with the payroll and benefits person. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one I mentioned is you funded
Mhm.
her costs come out of the town manager's budget and then next year it'll be in the finance.
Okay, but so if we added these Public Works and Assistant Manager position back in while maintaining the benefits and payroll position, we would essentially, by the time that's done, have added another full-time position into staff by FY 26.
26,
There would be a whole full position that's been added. So I do think it's important, like just again, when we talk about it, we keep saying, oh, we already have the Assistant Manager position, but along the way, we added this payroll and benefits position also. So as we put the Assistant Manager position back in, and if we do, and the Public Works position back in, we in effect have gone up a full position, the payroll and benefits position.
What's the IT position factor into that?
So the IT position went away prior to the budget of last year. It was already gone and already contracted services, correct? For now?
Yes.
When we
Thank
get
you.
to that.
I forgot
yeah.
exactly what we had the.
Now over from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 25, you'll have only added one position. It was the payroll clerk,
23 to 25.
because
Yeah.
there was a public works position
That would-
in 23 and you
Right.
cut it in
Right.
24.
But we also did add our communications director position. So I think we must have added two.
That was a third. Pete was partly at the library already, so I think he went from 60% to 100% or something, or 40% to
Oh,
100%.
okay. I thought he
We added 1.5 then, something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And you wanted to know about.
No, I was gonna say, it might be helpful to kind of see all this.
But it is on the, it's in the additional
one of
documents, the
these,
FTE's document, which Cornell is gonna double check before next time, right? Is that right? But it is, it's document
There are FDs.
That
A in here.
that
Leo.
FTE document did not match up with the one we.
We were talking to Cornell and Zach about that. They're gonna double check those at that FTE document. Do you have last year's FTE document, Zach? Okay.
It was given to us after, so maybe it is.
We have it. All of us have it from council. If you don't, let us know. We have it. Employee count document. Okay. And are there any open positions? That was Leo's other question right now.
Unbilled.
Unfilled that are in the budget that are currently unfilled positions. I know that happens a lot of times in fire and police especially. How many do we know? 3 currently open that are budgeted but not currently filled. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was my last list of
That's good.
questions. Thank you.
Nice.
Cornell. Thank you, Zach.
All right, I think now we'll turn it to Shelley, if that's, you ready to roll? So this would be. I definitely think people ought to take advantage of Zach's numbering, so we all have across, just in case. And then if we add documents, it'll be like document 33A,
Right.
you know what I mean? So that's kind of
Well, in the department budget, there are page numbers up in the right-hand corner.
nice.
So first starts after page 11.
And then we'll come back to the finance. We're gonna do finance tonight too.
Well, third of the, eighth of the way in.
Okay.
This is the same number. Yeah, well, detailed number.
Town clerk's office, FY 25.
Found it. Good.
Shelley Crosby.
Yes, so at the introduction of the actual breakouts of departments, you will have my summary of the town clerk's office and the responsibilities of the roles that we play out. As you can see, the department covers a lot of different areas. And a lot of what we do in the clerk's office is mandated by the state. So we don't have a lot of flexibility in how we set up the office, but the goal to set up the office is to be sure that everybody is cross-trained. And because everybody is cross-trained and we participate with the state and the university in partnerships, we are actually able, I think, to stretch the taxpayer dollar much greater than other communities. I would expect that the budget for the clerk's office would be much higher if we did not utilize volunteer efforts, grant opportunities, partnerships, residents such as Frederica Smith, who donates her time every single week to come in and actually work alongside staff. So, I've always tried to teach and or keep my office open as learning education area. And because of that, we get a lot of help at no cost. So that is a good benefit. You will see that I did break out the current list of tasks, the mandates, the methods of delivery. And I, with the new council, wanted to be able to share with you a transparent overview of where I see the current challenges for our department. And so I broke out each of the sections under the challenges and areas of concern. And I tried to be very forthcoming in explaining to you some of the areas that I have of concern, how we might be able to mitigate those areas of concern. And what I wanted to do was be able to show you that these are areas that we will have to consider if things are not funded at the level that we've asked. We've tried to turn in a very reasonable budget. And any of the increases that I will go over with you, I have an explanation as to how and why they're there. Some of the big things that I do want to just state is that having the university in our community provides an awesome opportunity. But having a university in our community also presents a challenge in the sense that we are dealing with things in Orono in the clerk's office that very few clerks in the state deal with. I'm having to think through international complex problems, how to import cars from other nationalities, how to deal with documents that are not in an English language, and how to be able to bring in people from other communities. And that is a great and wonderful thing. But it does tax the office. And so we have to be sure that folks get out for education. Likewise, the state agencies do reach out to our office for a lot of leadership, mentoring, and questions, because I'm dealing with some unique factors that not everybody is. So I only say that because we have an incredible staff downstairs, and the two that we have hired at the front desk are phenomenal. The trained clerks is about 18 months to 3 years. So they're still in the early stages of training, but they're doing an awesome job. So as I said, I've listed out the concerns, and we are in a presidential year. So presidential years also cause a little bit of grief. But we can jump right into administration. And if we jump right into administration, there are a couple of areas that I've highlighted. I'm not sure that they're probably the same areas that you have highlighted that you have questions on. The first thing I would draw your attention to is under the full-time salary. I have asked for 16 hours a week to have some additional help and support, because with this being a presidential year and the fact that we have some areas where we're running tight on staffing, I need to be able to bring in some additional help. In the past, I would have put that under elections wages and I would have factored it, but I did not feel that that was fair to do. And it wasn't transparent, because if they're actually performing duties other than elections, then we really shouldn't be billing it to elections. You will see that the advertising expenses has increased about 33%. When we lost the Penobscot Times as a local vendor to advertise, all of your public hearing notices now go to the Bangor Daily News. That is a significant increase. And as the council has worked to be transparent and forthcoming and notice, that has increased that budget. So we're doing good things. It's just the cost is rising with it. On the second page, you will see a 21% roughly increase on professional services. And that runs in tandem with the copier maintenance of 36% increase as well. That has to do with the cost of the Xerox, the copiers, the printing. As we move to being more transparent, sending out notices, making sure that residents have materials that they need, the cost of printing all of those things has gone up. It used to be, we used to drive a lot of folks to the website and not send out mailers or not send out notices. But in light of the new direction that we're taking of wanting to be sure that folks get things in their homes and are properly noticed, we are sending a lot more mailers. So just the cost of supplies, the lease, and then the printing has really driven those lines up. Record storage is also up 33%, and that is because downstairs we have run out of room. To be quite frank, we are busting at the seams. Any of those of you who have popped in and had a chance to see the back room or see the vault can attest to the fact that we're making use of all the space we have available, but we also have had to send a lot of boxes off site. And those boxes that are sent off site have to be cataloged, they have to be stored properly, and that does come at a cost. Those are my highlights under the admin part of the budget, which would just be the town clerk's budget. I am willing to continue on with elections and general assistance, but I would pause for questions if anyone has questions or something I didn't mention.
Jacob?
Yeah, a couple of questions and not specific to budget numbers, I guess, but staffing. Staff morale, and then you had some comments in here about, you get here at, 6:30 to open up the office or 6 AM, et cetera. Is our staff, yourself including, working more hours than was originally intended?
So
Like, are they, normally putting in 50, 60 hour? Yeah, because that is a concern to me.
okay, so
Putting
what?
More hours in.
Yep, so how I can answer that is my staff does not work over 40 hours. I make sure that they stay to 40 unless it's an election week, or it is something where we have a pressing deadline that must be addressed. Wherever possible, I will borrow staff from other departments to come in to try to keep my 2 staff to not go over 40. I do make sure that they take lunches. There are some days it's a struggle, and sometimes they're not getting lunch until later in the afternoon. I am a salaried employee. I come in the morning at my choosing. I ride with my husband. I stay until 4:30 and I do get out. I try to limit myself to no more than 45 hours a week if possible. But having said that, I'm available when I'm needed. That is the role that I took as your clerk. I do not feel at this time that I am being overworked. But what I tried to convey in this is if we leave it as it is, I can see over time that we are going to wear people down. And I see that approaching. There are times I get tired, and when I get tired, I try to take my time when I can. And Cornell will know that when I'm ready for a break, I send him a message and say, hey, can I take a day here or there? And I work it around the schedule. So I'm not sure that I answered your question.
You did, let me kind of rephrase what you just told me, just to make sure I'm correct, is that, right now, staff, including yourself, are working the appropriate amount of hours and not being burned out. However, if it were to continue like this, we would potentially run into burnout and morale issues.
Well, what I will tell you,
Good.
yeah, what I will tell you is that per our own internal controls, we are supposed to have 2 people at the counter when we are open to the public. I am the only backup. We do have another staff member in another department who is trained for downstairs, and we'll pull her in a pinch. But if we pull her into our department, then her work suffers in her department. And so if I am the only backup, then that means if someone wants to take a day off, they're entitled to a day off. They're entitled to be sick and or take vacation. But if they do that, then I am stopping my role and I'm stepping into the front counter and I am waiting the public and I'm taking on the full responsibility of being that role, which works, but long-term makes it difficult to stay on top of things.
So just to ask about that, so it, within,
Yes.
just to follow up to the internal controls response, is that, because I think at a time not too long ago, we were down to 1 person, I think. Well, maybe you always had to be there or something. My question is, because in an emergency, somebody's sick or something like that, is it not possible that we have 1 person at the desk that day and you continue to do your other work unless it gets really bad or something like that? Do you have that kind of flexibility, or is it like, if there's someone out or if someone's on vacation, we've got to have 2 people there? I'm just Curious what- how-
Well, we're supposed to have two people at the counter working when money is being handled. And so what I am saying is I will step out to that role. And I will fill that role and or will use backup from the other department. There was a time when I lost both people at the front and I was the only person running my office. And that happened for a period of about 2.5 weeks. And where I could, I borrowed that employee from another department.
Then we had one, right? And then the second came on
Right,
after that.
well,
So-
when we had that one Leo, I was at the counter and I was working, and please do not think that I don't approve, I have no problem being at the counter. I'm just saying that the other work in the background is not getting done.
Yeah, no, and I think I can see where that's a problem, and that's what my question is, process wise. Couldn't it be that on those occasions we have one, but I didn't know if it was to make sure we were timely in servicing the public.
Yeah.
Or if it was, but you mentioned money, handling money.
Yeah,
Um,
so I have been your clerk since January of 2015. I can tell you there have been times we have closed the office because we did not have staffing.
because you
Meaning-
didn't have a second.
Because I may have been the only one here. Or there was actually, and I remember a couple of instances where everybody was out. Like one of us got sick, one of us had a planned vacation, there wasn't anybody to come in. And so they posted that we weren't gonna open the office that day. But that was when I first started here as clerk. When I first started here as a clerk, there was 2 full-time people on the desk at all times, and you had a half-time person in addition to, and then you had a person in the back.
Yep.
So, yes,
Jacob, did you have more questions?
One real quick, health insurance, it seems odd that is going down. Is that more just it was budgeted too high last year and we're right sizing it? I don't know any company who's paying less in health insurance.
so what I can tell you about that, and please, Zach, correct me if I've mistake this, but we had employees that were all taking advantage of the health benefit. And then as those employees left and new employees were brought in, they weren't needing the health insurance provided by the town. So they took the buyout, and that is where
That
we
explains-
saw the
okay.
decrease.
Thank you. Perfect.
And then 16 hours, Shelley, that for additional part-time clerical assistant, would that be, so would they not qualify for benefits if they work 16 hours a week? How does that work? Or Jack or somebody?
Prorate the benefits?
So like benefits? Yeah. Okay. And you use this person on a regular schedule or as needed, or how would you do that?
So the goal is to use them primarily as a fill-in when someone needs to take time. If there is no one with scheduled time that week.
Right.
It would be a person to come in during our heavy volume, cover lunches, that sort of thing.
Okay.
It's gonna have to be a creative position, so to speak.
Yeah.
That will have to be the right
Yeah.
person. But we'll make it work.
You're a good leader, and I think the people that work for you, I think you get a lot out of you just provide really good service out of your department, so I wouldn't have any doubt that you could make it work.
Can I say Something about that position too?
Yep, we're gonna have to move along though, because we're
I
gonna
know.
be 6:30, we're gonna wrap the budget today, so.
Just
go ahead.
want to be clear, so that 16-hour-a-week position, which is sort of somehow going to be worked out as an on-call kind of position to come in when needed, is that a permanent position that you're asking for, or is this a temporary, it's an election year position? I wasn't clear at the beginning. And is it in the budget, Cornell? Is this other additional half-time FTE?
I don't believe it's in there, is it?
Currently it is.
Oh, it is, okay.
Okay, so it just needs to get added to the FTE page in the back and the cover page, which talks about added
That's what I was
positions,
finding, the FTE page.
but it's in the budget itself. It's just not on the
Yes, it's
FTE
funded.
page or on your cover page about new positions being added.
But it's not in that spreadsheet in the additional info. that-
Okay, but are you envisioning it as a long-term position, then it would start and it would just continue? We would have this 16 hours a week into the future. It's not a temporary election year problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I felt that with this year being the presidential, it was essential that it get added. And then I was expecting that it probably would continue.
Thanks, Jeff.
And where is that in here? Is that just in with the full-time salary?
No, it's part-time, I thought it's part-time wages here.
So it's on the spreadsheet page, the custom budget report. It's included in that change of 13,765 there.
Yeah.
But it isn't written up on any of the previous pages, right? I didn't miss something else here about it. Okay, so any information about it is just on the budget line here. Thanks.
All right, since, what do you have? You doing elections next, Shelley?
Yes, so there really isn't a lot to say about elections, other than it's a presidential year. Presidential years, this is the growth that I would expect. And then next year, when I come back to you, you'll see it go back down. But with a presidential year, we see about 6,900 people vote in the November election. We register anywhere from 2,000 to 2,400 new voters on election day. And I do see my wages on that November election. The last November election we had the grant. And so I was very free with hours and got people in and got them trained. So that budget was pretty exorbitant for a presidential, but we had $159,000 at our disposal to use. So we don't have that this time. So I've tried to be respectful of the numbers. So there really isn't a lot to say other than it's presidential.
We don't pay the university for the use of the field house on election day, do we?
Excuse me?
We don't pay the university for field house use on election day, do we?
Well, we're not using the field house currently because of the infrastructure programming going on up there. We're actually using the Collins Center. The Collins
So
Center,
are we paying the
Yes.
Collins Center?
we're paying roughly $1,500 to use the Collins Center.
Stupid, but I understand.
It's eloquently put. Sorry,
Yeah, I forgot where.
yeah, no, it's, those are conversations we could
Yes.
probably have. Anything else? Do you have general assistance or anything?
I
for us
do
to-
have general assistance.
On the part-time salary, again, maybe you said this, I missed it. So you staff up additional these workers just for the events?
The election workers, yeah.
Yes, and it's so an election cycle is 60 days roughly. And I will have staff coming in Leo to assist with the volume before, during, and following the election. Yep. So that part-time wage line is gonna cover those folks.
General assistance?
Yes, so general assistance is a line that is a mandated line by the state. It's one of the few budgets that we can overexpend because we have to take care of public assistance benefits. What I can tell you about general assistance is since the time of COVID and since the time that we had a lot of rent relief programs and other assistance programs, we have seen an uptick of general assistance. My rent line is exorbitantly high. And part of that is in part to SSI or folks that are in the appeals process of obtaining Social Security benefits. And the way that that works is once they enter that system and they're in the chute of getting their approval, if they are without income and they need assistance from the municipality and we pick them up, we are obligated to take care of that situation until they are finished going through that appeals process. As long as they meet the minimum standard in order to stay in there, then we're picking them up on a regular basis. And what I can tell you is Bangor and some of the area communities are busting at the seams as well with general assistance. So because we are a bedroom community to Bangor, and that's where the services are for a lot of folks, we tend to get overflow. So right now, currently, we do have active SSI cases that are going. And if they continue into this budget, then I can see this being a continuing issue of us exhausting our rent. One of the things that I have spoken with Zach about and we talked about last week is perhaps at the end of the fiscal year, if we take a good look at general assistance and we have money left over from the current budget, it might be something that we may want to have a conversation with the council about, that perhaps we set up a reserve account or a holding account, and the council could have a discussion about whether to carry those funds forward to help offset. But what I can tell you is, yes, we're expending this money. We are reimbursed. So if it is a state approved case, then we get reimbursed at 70%. If it is a federal reimbursed case, such as an SSI, and we have properly filed paperwork to be reimbursed, we would be reimbursed at 90%. So yes, we're putting the money out there. It has to be recorded within the operations budget, but we are receiving back the revenue as long as we meet the requirements of the program.
That was my question. So the figures we see here then, what they're really showing us is the amount that we don't get reimbursed back for. Because when I look at this number and I see a $10,000 amount, does that mean we actually pay much more than that, but we're reimbursed back most of it and only the 10,000 on rent assistance is what we actually end up paying?
So the way that you would look at these numbers, or the way I would understand these numbers, is if we are putting out 10,000, we should expect to get back 70% of the 10,000.
Oh, okay. So 10,000 is what we put out and we expect to get back about 7,000 of that
Yes,
eventually. But it
yes,
probably comes in
Yeah.
a future budget. Where does that show up on what budget line when the money comes back?
in revenues,
Revenues.
And there's a line that says
Yes.
general assistance revenues or something there.
yes.
Perfect, got it.
Just to follow through on your suggestion, in this case, and maybe by the time we get through end of June, it's end of June.
Mhm.
Theoretically, we may have 2,000 left in that account. Are you advocating or requesting that we do set up I mean, it seems like it might make sense to set up. That I like the thought, and it seems like that makes sense. To sweep that into a reserve account for this line, and therefore, I guess you could theoretically keep the budget at 8 if you had a reserve.
So I have done this in another community, and the way it was explained to me at that time by the auditor of that community was that the intent of that reserve account would never be that it would grow beyond what you would allocate.
Yeah,
But it would be there as a buffer, and in a bad year, you know, municipally for the operations budget, you could transfer back to it. But you never want to see it as a profit or as a long-term moneymaker. You would use it as that buffer. And I was explaining to Zach that if I was to take 2 SSI cases and I total out right now the next year's rent for just 2 SSI cases, I'm gonna max out my rent line with just 2 households. Yeah, so that is when a reserve fund of that kind might come in handy, but that certainly would be something that I said to Zach, we'd want to sit down with Cornell and probably have conversation with the auditor and see whether or not they recommend that we do that.
Yeah.
We do have very generous residents in town that at Christmas time will make like a one-time, I've had some of my residents in town that have given $1,000 towards rent relief or oil or heat. I've had some that have put up some families in hotels when they know that we're in dire straits. Those people have asked to be anonymous, and we handle it through our general assistance program.
Anything else for the clerk?
Just to let you know, in the revenues, right in the middle of the first page, revenues, it's a GA reimbursement of 9,500.
Excellent. Okay, Shelley, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yep. Happy to be here. Jack, we can do finance next. Yep. And then is there anything else after finance, Cornell?
We've got-
Town manager, town council, okay. You could push those as Yeah, the insurance and debt piece, is that part of finance?
I handle that part, so I can talk about that as well. Talk about, it, so.
You got your hands full, Zach. So, get at it.
IT is on there as well.
Okay. That's part of finance, but the response.
It's different than.
Okay, okay, all right, let's go. Thank you.
I'll try to make this quick without a whole lot of changes. As we discussed earlier, you can see some increases on there from our new staff member.
Yeah, so we're gonna catch up with you.
Where are we? Right here.
That's the first one in the department section. It's the first one.
I was there.
All right. Page one, department section, yay.
All right, I was all excited to go. So as you can see, we had some increases from our new staff member. And just a quick overview of our areas of discussion. I began taking over the role as tax collector and treasurer, Sophie with those roles previously. I'm kind of learning as I go, so it's been a little bit time consuming as I'm kind of making my way into that world. I have done the trainings on it, but the trainings are a little different than actually doing it. Under areas of concern, I really only cited one. We made the transition to Trio Web, and it has been a very bumpy transition. We've experienced all sorts of issues, and Trio is very slow in correcting these issues. We'll identify a significant issue, it'll go to their development department, and then 4 to 6 months later, we'll finally get a solution. And that has caused some trouble with various projects in this fiscal year. One thing that we have identified in the past, and based on council's reaction to this budget book, we've discussed in the past doing budget book software, which is essentially a software that we can take our Excel file, upload it, and then the software generates kind of essentially this binder. Based on the less is more approach we've taken this year, I'm not sure if that would be the approach to go because those generated books tend to be very lengthy just on how it's created. It likes to do single pages for certain projects and everything. So it's still something we could consider. I'll leave that up to you if we want to keep going with this approach or if we want to look into that more. That's something I'm happy to talk about at a later date if you guys would like.
Okay.
On the Trio web, what's doesn't sound like a good prognosis to me. It's been tough and it continues to be tough and, 2 or 3 month delay or response times. Is there any talk or consideration of plan B when it comes to that? I mean,
So we've looked at Munis, and my understanding from talking to other communities in Cornell who has experience with Munis is not any better.
Maybe there's a market if someone wants to start a new company is what I'm getting out of this, Leo.
that's how
Maybe
the
you want to.
technology's for record, so it's not to talk too loud, but.
So Trio and Munis are kind of the two big games in the municipal accounting software world. And they both have their own issues. The customer service is lacking in both, and Munis is significantly more expensive than Trio. So at this point, I think we're better off to kind of stay with the issues that we know and can kind of react to and work with at the lower price tag than to try and go with implementing new software at a higher price with possibly similar issues.
But did it come from transitioning to their web
Yes.
platform? And on site no longer an option, or I mean, did you not have the same issues when you were running it locally, or?
So we still had issues when we ran it locally. The transition to web was sold to us as a significant improvement, faster correction times and everything. And they're shifting away from the on-site platform anyway.
Hmm.
So we decided to jump on it a little early while we would have Trio's full attention on our transition, rather than when they force everybody to make the transition. They've got their other 200 towns also making the transition.
Okay. So short story is you're riding this thing into the ground.
I'm in it till the end.
If we don't get an email from a Trio customer service representative telling us what we got wrong with tonight's conversation. They always call me, actually, yeah. So, all right, so, what else do you have for us, Zach?
Just a couple other increases I'll go over. We have a nice little bump in our training budget, mostly due to the fact that we've got new people and new positions. I'm new to the finance director role. There's still a lot I need to learn. We've got a brand new payroll and benefits clerk who's pretty new to the world of payroll, which can get pretty in-depth and new training and there. And our bookkeeper is coming up on year 2 in the role. So we're all kind of new to our roles and learning as we go. So I requested a little extra funding there to kind of get us into some more trainings and classes.
And if you go work somewhere else, the town that hires you has to pay us back, right? Like the police department?
Bite your tongue.
Yeah,
Not happening.
yeah.
We do have a bump in software and licensing fees because for our lovely new Trio Web, they bumped up our rates as well.
For the privilege.
And then we also have a slight bump in professional services. That's where we pay for our payroll software, and that's just due to their annual rate increase.
We appreciate the willingness of staff to take on things and learn things and become, first, professional development is important, and I certainly, I appreciate everyone making the time, because it's not just, takes energy to do it, right? And, in addition to your regular work responsibilities, so I'm really support the idea that people are taking on more, and doing more. Any other questions for Zach?
One question, one quick statement.
Sure.
Payroll. Do we periodically send that out to RFP just to make sure that we're getting the best level of service, deal, et cetera?
We haven't sent it out to RFP in a while. We've been using ADP since I started here about 6 years ago. It's something we can consider.
It's like kind of like insurance, shopping it around every once in a while. I think it could be helpful, potentially save some money, maybe not. And then my really quick statement is relates to the IT, not for purposes of budget conversation, but I think it would be important after the budget conversation. I would like an update or a refresher. I know, at least the bank, we have a lot of problems, with fraud. And so, to talk about some of the best practices the town is using, both on a software side and a personnel side. So just to make sure that we are adequately protected.
I'll talk to the finance chair about that, finance operations chair.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yep, all right. Any-
That talking about security publicly is not always the best method.
Fine, being on the council, yeah, there are some, I'm still learning, Leo.
All right. Anything else for Zach in the finance presentation?
I think that covers it in the finance presentation. In insurances, there's not a whole lot of changes. There's a couple little bumps there in workers' comp and property and casualty. That's on page 15 of the Trio report.
Waiting.
Well, I think Mitch is gonna handle it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm lost. Where's the insurance? info?
Page 15. So custom reports on the top right-hand corner. You can see the page numbers.
Yeah.
Insurance went up,
It was in Shelley's section, right? We hopped over it when Shelley was here to the middle of Shelley's section.
the workers' comp went up 29.89%.
Got it.
Yep, so workers' comp went up, as Dan just said, 29.89%. That's just based on after they did our audited. They audited our payroll and everything like they do every year. And based on our experience rating and various other things, it just ended up getting a little bit of a bump this year. And then property casualty had a bump as well, as they did a revaluation of coverage. They hired a third-party company to come through and reevaluate everything, which resulted in them finding some additional value in things that were not initially properly recorded. So we got a little bit of a bump there.
Anything else for Zach before we move on to IT? Thank you, Zach. Doing a good job.
Thank you.
Page 4.
I have inherited IT,
Man of many hats.
and obviously there's a lot of some information here, and hopefully you've read it. I don't want to go through everything, but I think the one thing that I have recognized, and this is the second time since I've been here that I have touched a piece of IT. The last time, every morning I would have to unplug a hard drive, put it in a bag and bring it to the bank vault across the street and put a new one in, because that's how we backed up IT. And that's within the last 10 years.
Please
So
don't
lots have changed, okay? But when you think about everything we do here is connected to IT in some way. And I think that we had a assistant town manager that went on to take a full-time job in IT, so had a skill set that did a lot of work. You're gonna see that obviously the biggest jump is in that consultant, works with Bestia Rollins. The challenge is the day-to-day stuff, although I know your basics and can triage some problems. I'm not an IT genius. Zach has been helping me on the billing side. We have some other folks with our phones system. We have, Jessica at the police department has kind of taken that on. She's always kind of been that contact person, but it all kind of feeds through us. And to keep it running and to keep this place running all the time, it's hard. I mean, things come up, you've got to fix them. And so that, although it may seem like that's a big jump, in the total of that consulting line, and I kind of jumped around, but I was,
Page 6, where it's the $43,000 jump.
Yep,
That's what we're looking at.
yep, so the $43,000 jump, ultimately that 35 would be there. Right, because that's big projects that we have in changing over servers or fixing switches or things like that. We are trying to bring our whole system up to date. So that extra bit is really comes into the customer service and fixing day-to-day problems and setting up new computers and things like that, that A, we don't have a lot of time for, and B, we don't have necessarily the skill set. If I was to do it, it would probably take me all day and it takes them 20 minutes to an hour. I think that's the big place, but I also think that if you were to try to hire somebody, you're gonna be nowhere near this number, way higher.
Yep.
And it gives you a bench. So when I call SJ Rollins and there's a problem, it's not one person I deal with. They go, oh, who deals with this? And they pick the person off the bench that's dealt with it versus if you had a person, their skill set's what you got, and then you've got to go out and find the pieces. The other place that I'm going to just bring your attention to is the salaries line. Pete and I, as we run this, we are both paid out of the TIF, and this is not TIF eligible. This is operation. Okay, so a portion of our salary would be here. Okay, so that's different. And ultimately, the idea here is we're gonna get to a new town manager, look at this, see what the best course forward is, but this sets us up to be successful, to have somebody manage IT without a lot of need to do a ton of stuff. I mean, there are times where it's busy. There are other times that I, can go week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without talking to anybody about IT. So it just depends. But I think it's a work in progress. I will tell you that the other thing that I was able to do was our Google contract was up. It was supposed to go from $12 a user to $18 a user. I convinced them to give me a 2-year extension on the $12 a user.
Notice you're looking at Leo when you.
I did, because of other things changing, and one of the things that we have to make a decision on is that we still also need Microsoft products. So we have to get licensure in that, and that's expensive to kind of do both.
Yeah.
Right? So, but in this time and this moment, I didn't think it was the best time to try to all of a sudden go from Google to Microsoft. I wasn't ready to do that, so decided to see if we could negotiate that out. So we've got 2 years, but that will go up. That number will go up one way or the other. And then the other Google, the cloud-based information, that's part of that Microsoft subscriptions for those that need them, because we deal with outside the state and folks that have to use Microsoft. So, so other than that, I mean, I think, we have to think about how we move forward in this to make it work, because it is a vital piece of infrastructure and operation that keeps us all going. I mean, you guys know when all of a sudden we can't hear somebody and it's like a scramble, right? So, but that's kind of IT in a nutshell. I don't know if anybody has any questions or.
You guys, Sarah?
So first of all, thank you for jumping into this and really keeping everything together. I know it sounds hard, but from our end, I think you guys have done a fabulous job and things have kept working on our end. I hope other staff all feel the same. I just wanted to, when you said, we need to look for a permanent solution, which will happen when we get a new town manager. But I also just wanted to check numbers. So I heard you say you thought that actually hiring an IT full-time person would be more than what we're currently paying. When I see that we're currently paying full-time salary, 18,000, benefits about 5.5, and then 78,000 on consultant services. So altogether, that's like 111,000, and you're thinking it would cost more than that, or what am I missing?
Well, it could cost more than that, but what I'm gonna tell you is
Okay.
that 78,000, the totality of that, remember, basically, there was about 35 that we budgeted last year.
Right,
That's for projects outside of like coming in, somebody working on redoing our network switches or updating large projects.
so the 35,000 is something that would never be allowed to be done in-house,
Well,
even if we hired somebody.
it depends on the skill sets and
Okay.
and where that goes. So you're still gonna have a consulting piece
Got it.
because you're not gonna get the breadth of that information out of one person is the challenge with that.
Okay,
But
probably
to
that-
be fair,
uh-huh.
even with all that, you could be in that realm
Okay,
of that
thank you.
in the IT world.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Because that delta is kind of, I was just thinking the exact same thing, Sarah, but that delta of 43 is really what we're talking about. Because even when we had more support,
Yep.
we already had 35.
That's what I
And,
was-
and we spent 37, obviously, yeah.
And this is a guesstimate based on how we're using it currently. So it could be less. I mean, I don't think it will be more.
Is there for, the, like, license registration and all that state mandated stuff? Do they go to the state for support on IT
So
stuff?
supporting any software like Trio and all that, we use the support from them. But a lot of times it's about the integration of the two. So sometimes it's, well, we have these computers that are struggling to integrate in some way, and what is that? Or they need a dedicated space on our network to be able to operate. Or, I mean, when you think about police cameras, you think about our fire trucks have Wi-Fi on them and have to connect. There are a ton of things that have to integrate back in. So they, a lot of times will work, if we have problems, we'll work with the vendor, their IT side to mesh with our IT side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then you bring up police cameras and all that they might have. That's not, SJ Rollins isn't.
It's all part of
doing the support.
It's all part of it. Yep.
So whenever you
Their
need something,
MacBooks, they're at their.
Everything that we do IT, SJ Rollins is currently
dialed in.
helping us with. A lot of times I will triage a problem, go over and say, oh, well, I could do this, or, hey, I got way beyond what I can do. Or at least give them, this is where we are, because a lot of times people that know there's a problem say it just doesn't work. And then that's a lot of time. So I will spend a little time going, okay, so let me ask some questions that we're not doing of the consultant.
So with the consultant fee, I just have a real question. Is there like a base fee that we pay to have them on call and then you do per job? Or is it all just per job, or how does that work?
So it is a bank, really, I guess, would be, we got in a program where we basically just replenish the bank and they send us a bill and it puts money in there. We don't have to, it's based on what they do.
Okay,
So
it's
when we
a
talk
pay
to them, it's
play
based on
type
what they
thing.
do. We don't have to pay them like a retainer or anything like
Okay, that's
that.
what I was just
It is-
curious. All
It
right.
is just, as we go, we pay them, and we talk, bigger projects, obviously, we talk through, it's the unknowns that are more difficult.
All right, so in the end, when the manager, he'll have to decide whether
Yeah.
that plus an IT is cheaper or just stick with this. So that sounds.
Well, right, and understanding it over, I mean, we're now probably have about a 6 month, 7 months with working in this, you'll see something, but also. And like I said, this may be the best solution for us, because you don't have a person, you don't have benefits, you don't have all those other pieces that connect to it, and we get a larger bench.
Yeah.
But those are,
Yeah.
I think a discussion.
clearly the
Thank
right
you.
fit for right now, though.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
clearly.
absolutely.
I agree.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else, IT? Can we move on to manager and council? That's the next one, that's the next one, right? That's the last one for tonight. Manager and council. Sorry, start with you, Cornell.
Manager's on page 9.
Thank you, Mitch.
Let's make-
Thanks, Mitch.
As I mentioned, it's full-time. Manager. The assistant manager and full-time administrator.
Okay.
That's. Didn't change. Really. anything, the DEI consulting services, that contract ends. I don't know what the next step is, but I did put a placeholder in there for some funds. Didn't change the wellness, the community connector, or the public health. And the legal services be well over that, but I don't anticipate next year that you'll have town manager negotiations, or also handles our negotiations on ASME. We hope to have that settled shortly, so those two big expenses won't be.
What page is legal services?
Oh, so
10.
page 10 on right now.
Does this cover legal services for like, for tax abatements and things like that? No?
No, that's in assessing.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Sorry, why am I not seeing legal?
Under professional services.
Professional services, right there in the middle, it's 41,500.
Spent 48.
And on the DEI consulting work, I know it sounded like from both Lori and Chief, Lori Governor and Chief Lowe, like that's been a really positive experience. Was that cycle due to end anyway at the end of this year? We had hired this consultant to work with us ongoing. Was that just for a year, or what was that?
Well, it was a contract of 12,000 this year. In I don't know what is supposed to happen next year.
So I think it's obviously up to kind of funding, but I think the idea was this was the beginning of a continued conversation to kind of work through DEI and that sort of thing. So we were waiting to hear back, and I don't want to speak because of the legal portions of this, but waiting to hear back from the consultant about what the next steps were in moving kind of more to work.
I think the next step was to report to the council.
Yeah.
And that was the work that Lori and Dan were leading together, the police chief and the.
What's his name? Justin. Justin.
So we should get some report about that. And we have, I just want to be sure we've checked with them. It seems like it's been a very positive experience from what we've heard from them, and that it's moving the issues forward. They wanted to move forward. So I just want to be sure we're not cutting out the funding they needed to continue something which staff has felt is working well for them. Is this the level of funding
Right,
that
he
they're
was doing,
wanting?
so for this year, he was doing the contract, and we just had so it was 2 months ago. With senior staff on DEI training, and then it's 2 months ago. I think he was gonna develop a report, and then the next step would be coming back to the council, but let me check with Lori.
Now's the time, right?
I
Yeah.
just want to double check it because we've been hearing pretty rave reviews from staff so far.
Yep.
I have one more question
Sure.
in this section. Not on the line items here, just back to the write-up and looking at, positions as we go forward. I don't know if, just backtracking on this paragraph that you provided at the top of your second page, talking about changes, recent staffing changes and things that have alleviated pressure. So our previous assistant town manager, I know, did lots of things, as everyone on staff here does. They're all very versatile and appreciated. I guess I'm wanting to know, my understanding, maybe Cornell doesn't know, but what we understand about what the previous assistant town manager did in big categories. I had an understanding that she had a lot of IT expertise and did lots of our IT stuff in-house. I think that I remember taking notes last time that she was also involved in human resources for us, but I could be off on that. Is that correct? I don't know, was she involved in payroll and benefits?
Yeah, she was involved in payroll and benefits, and she also did a lot of the workers' comp and the property casualty stuff as well.
Yeah. And she also did sort of communications things also before we had a full-time communications person, right? As I recall, a lot of our website and social media stuff also, is that right?
Yeah, before Pete did a portion of that, but also worked at the library.
Yeah.
And she did some of that stuff, kind of fill in when when needed. So they worked together on that, a lot of that. Most of the website stuff was being kind of turned over to, we did it a lot of different ways. Some of the departments did it and some stuff like that, so.
But so with that list, if I have IT, payroll benefits, human resources, communications, workman's comp, and something else you mentioned.
Property casualty.
Okay, am I missing any big category that she
So-
was heavily
so-
involved in?
A lot of assisting an executive function with the town manager.
Yeah.
Also involved in transit, involved in the backs. She was involved in a lot of the environmental, the beginnings of the environmental committee. Also did the OTO fiber. So a lot of that executive, there's a big piece of the executive function.
Projects, yeah.
Okay.
Grant writing, things like that.
Okay, that's helpful, just because as we're looking ahead, some of that's been farmed out to other people at this point. We've outsourced our IT, we've hired someone else to do payroll and benefits, we've hired someone else to do communication. So some of those pieces slack has already been taken up and other ones not, so it's helpful for me to have a sense of what those
I would
are.
just be careful, because I think that what we got in return is not necessarily, we got an entry level payroll benefit.
Totally
person
understand.
Or somebody that was dealing with higher level things.
Totally understand, just trying to figure out
Just-
which pieces
just-
have been
Yep.
picked up and which ones are still kind of more floating. Thank you.
Should be an interesting conversation as we bring a new manager in and hear how that person wants to staff their office and structure things and stuff like that, so.
Thank you.
Jake.
Yeah, professional services, that 41.5. I know Cornell, you said that we spent more this year than we likely will in the coming year. But that 41.5 is still what was budgeted last year. So I guess, I mean, theoretically, we won't have the employment issues and some of the other, one-time one-offs this coming year that we had last year. So is that 41.5? It just seems a little bit inflated to me, given kind of what we spent this year in a unprecedented year versus.
Well,
For 41 year
you
days,
spend-
48.
You're at.
Yeah, we spent 48,
Yeah.
yeah, this year in an extremely unprecedented year, it seems, but. This coming year, I mean, that's only supposed to drop to 41, I guess, I just, yeah.
That's 48. We just paid a $6,000, so we're at 54. And it's just, that is part of April. So we've still got May and June to go.
Okay, so that 41.5 truly is probably pretty good. I mean, as I was talking to Sarah about just two of us, every time we call a lawyer, it's, $300, so. Second question, on the bus line item. That 133.7. It seems like that would be a pretty stable line, so if we only spent 100 last year, why are we budgeting 133 this year?
Well, we're not all the way through the year yet. Or is that?
Yeah, that's not all. There's gonna be another payment.
Okay, all right, that's. the
These are
piece I'm missing,
expenses to
okay.
date.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
So. thanks for pointing that. So the 133 is what we pay for our portion. And that's from the TIF, correct?
No, that's from this, the bus that we pay from the tip is the community, the
Oh.
downtown.
Yes.
community.
Oh, that's the downtown, that's not what we pay into the back.
This one that you're talking about.
Yes.
Is the one to Bangor.
Oh, okay.
The Culver thing. But this is the big bus line that connects all of them.
Yes.
The one that's free that runs from downtown to the university, that comes up. And that's a portion with the universities.
Which is in what section? Sorry.
That would be in the economic development.
Thanks.
So next up, if you're done with that,
Yep.
we turn to council real quick, which I think is on page 7. That where it starts, 6.
Is it before or after the section you were just in?
General council, town council, wages.
7 of the custom budget report,
Yes.
not 7 of the binder. Or the other. Okay.
This covers our wages. The benefits that accompany with that. Travel, we're not moving around much. We probably should getting a lot of training, we probably, opinions will vary, but we could probably use a little bit of that. Anything jumping out to anybody? The MMA membership's going up, and that's just the cost, right?
I had two questions on this. One I already asked of Cordell, but on the second page where the community building mini grants are listed as a new program in 25. But they aren't actually. They were funded in the regular budget last year. They were on our budget PowerPoint presentation. I remember them there. So they were, so they're not really an addition if we were to continue them. I don't know what we choose about that, but that I noticed and flagged. And then I had flagged for Dan, maybe someone else here will remember and I do not. We had in our budget and maybe I thought it was on the council budget last year, but maybe I'm wrong. There was a fund for community feedback. There was a limited amount of money for a service that Sophie had researched and vetted and suggested to us where we could send out very quick surveys that people could answer by phone
Yeah.
to get very quick community feedback on issues with, as I recall, it was like 3 a month we were allowed to send out. And there was some discussion about funding having to do with the 360 evaluation process also. We lumped those into some fund that had a name that wasn't a whole lot of money. It was a fairly limited amount, but I guess I wanted to put back out to council. We didn't actually utilize those or purchase them this year because we went into a town manager transition and it didn't seem like a time when we had bandwidth to be thinking about how to engage the community in those ways. But I guess I'm hoping with a new town manager that we will be able to engage the community in some of those ways. And I don't know if staff could find that line item in the past budget for us and let us know what it was, or if anyone else has a note from their last year's budget. I'm at least curious for us to talk about it and whether
Yeah.
it's something we want or we don't want in the council budget.
Absolutely, I think have to have something in around the 360 evaluation that we're gonna do for both the manager and well, I don't know if that's part of the manager line but the council evaluation. We did the survey to see the priorities for the town manager search. We did that fairly inexpensively, right? That was something we did to get, so there's,
Did that
Different-
internally.
yeah, there's different ways we could do it, but
Right.
So is this a citizens engagement survey?
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
it's like a
some
text
digital
thing.
texting tool that Sophie had vetted. Yeah,
Was that discussed during the undesignated fund balance and designated?
It may have, it-
no, it was in the
Feel like
regular
there was a-
budget. It was in the regular budget.
I feel like there was a line in those funding
Yeah.
pieces that you talked about that went through. And maybe it happened
Budget.
just after that, but
yeah.
I'm guessing off the top of my head, cause I.
All right, well, we'll get to the bottom of
If
that.
someone can find it,
Yeah.
I'd like to see it because I was
Yeah.
interested in that, I don't know, software, whatever it's
Yeah, no,
called.
I agree.
And just, it wasn't a lot of money as I recall, and I'd like to just make sure it comes back to us for consideration.
Like it. Okay, anything else on council?
Yes.
The mini grant program, yeah. Larger discussion on that, when can we have, or is that, what part of this is that?
You wanna triple it?
Exactly, no, anyways, yes, so.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely have we'll come back. This is the overview. We'll
Okay,
we'll go back and,
Right.
just did it.
I wonder.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
Tell me I don't understand the process and.
no,
Uh-uh.
it's.
I think it's a good question. I'm not sure
Yeah.
where that comes up. Is,
Yeah.
so is the mini grant discussion, it's gonna be part of the council budget discussion, not, or is it?
Yeah, we're not crossing stuff
That's
out.
that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that is there, but yeah. we're
But
not-
I think there is sort of maybe a bigger discussion too that could be had about not just the mini grant, but we're talking about funding.
Yeah,
Holistic
let's do
this year, that's
comprehend.
kind of like a community
yes, no,
building fund
exactly.
Yep.
that maybe isn't just always mini grants, and we should think about where that lives. Does that live with council or where does that live? But we
Yep.
should make sure it doesn't get lost, as Jacob suggested.
Agreed, yeah.
Whether it's something we continue or don't, we need to talk about.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything here for the festival.
Right, because we had mentioned in discussions with Sophie in last budget season, as I recall, there was a discussion that to fund like a Orono Festival Days again, which a lot of community members had talked about and Leo had brought up and staff had brought us a quote about what that would cost, which was 11,000. And we had said, well, there isn't a point in funding it for this fall because it'll come too fast, which is probably true again with a new manager coming on. But I think all those things, whether it's Orono
Sure, yeah,
Festival Days or it's a music festival or it's the community mini grants, there's some category they all belong in, which is some kind of community building events fund. And we should have a discussion about that.
So what are your thoughts on, I mean, I feel like this is gonna be council's duty to sort of evaluate what we did.
I agree. Agreed.
We put 10,000 towards this and
Yeah.
I think
What do we
the
get from
intent
it?
was
Yeah.
of starting, you know, to be able to be a startup and get things going. And so what did we learn? I don't think no.
I don't think we have time to do that today, but this is the overview and we'll have to come back and decide.
That is something
But
I
I
want to
agree, we need,
yeah.
yeah, we
I agree
need to talk
entirely.
about it, because there's rules and structures that we might want to
Yeah.
think about.
And also, it would be helpful tonight is staff bringing us a update on funds expended in that when we get to the mini grant discussion tonight. And if not,
I'll get that for you next week.
Yeah.
Hasn't updated it since we've done one, so it's probably 7,000.
I think it's more. But it would be great to find out number of funds expended per project so that when we're evaluating it, we're taking a look at, you know, how much we spend
Yep.
on how many different projects and how we feel like the value was out of that. So thanks.
On that note, because we just approved the one and the May basket thing sound like it might have been a little rushed in the end. I mean, if they end up spending 300 on that, is there any opportunity to
Get that money back.
get the remaining bag or?
I actually think that most of it's gonna actually happen. I was in there the other day and most of them were potted. So to the public, if you want to deliver May Day baskets to anyone, Wednesday's your day. It's May Day. Show up and pick them up.
Can we come back to
I think it
mini
actually
grants when we get?
happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
We have got a mini.
It happened. People came, they were all there all over the store.
Oh, cool.
So it looks like it happened,
That's awesome.
but I don't know exactly.
All right, we have a mini grant at the end of tonight's agenda. So, anything else on the budget? We got council direction and additional budget information requests. I felt like we had a good conversation this morning, a couple of us with Zach and Cornell. If anyone has anything pressing that they are ready to articulate clearly right now, great. If not, I mean, if you want to let me know, we can bring things back and do it in a coordinated way that way and
I have one question.
Go ahead.
It's a bigger scale one back on the budget. I forgot. Folks who were here last budget season will remember that we were in a process of salary bumps for staff that were not related to union negotiations. So non-unionized staff have been in a process of a three-tiered salary bump that
Yep.
there had been a big process. Apparently, the previous councils had gone through and researched what they thought we should be getting up to, and there was a three-stage process to get there. And this is supposed to be our final year of that process. This is supposed to be the final salary bump year, this budget FY 25, from the information we were given last year. So I just do want to confirm, were those salary increases included in this year's budget?
They're included if it's in their contract. Most of their wage adjustments are in there.
They're already in the
Employment
contracts.
contract,
Okay, so it is included in there. Okay, thank
I
you.
mean, generally, it's a 4% increase unless it's contracted.
anymore. Okay.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
gonna close the
Thank you.
budget stuff, but I'd like to ask if there's any public comment on the budget before we move on. Okay, nobody walk out with those binders unless they're, you know.
They're getting updated, right? They'll be updated with the corrected information for next week.
Thank you for coming and following along. We're gonna be Matt led a conversation with the respondents to the Performing Arts Festival Coordination. This is Finance and Operations Committee matter. So Jacob, I don't know if you wanna, but I'd like to bump that because we promised people we wouldn't start that until at least 6:45. So
It's 6:43.
6:43, can we talk about the tentative council meeting schedule
Sure.
quickly? Anybody have any?
10 meetings that I don't know about?
There's we've got a tentative, I mean, we won't vote on this. This will be in order, right? In our May meeting for Cornell. Right. And appears to be the one thing that
Yeah.
I didn't print.
I didn't need it. I'm pulling it up on the screen.
Hey, Zach, thank you.
Thank you so much. Where's the schedule? Oh,
Want me
here.
to print it?
I got
There
it.
you go.
You
There
got
we
it?
go. It's also here. You
Thanks.
have it, Leo?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. My hope is that
So.
anything jump out at people. I mean, my hope is that we can start figuring out a way to make our committees work, that we don't all have to attend. Look at Jacob shake his head and affirm, and he's ready to do that. So my hope is that some of these committee meetings become focused committee meetings, so we got, you know, and I don't think we're ready to make that decision now, and anything we approve will get posted, and we could change it once we have a better plan to how to utilize our committee structure to get, you know, to perform without all seven of us having to be here.
So I think this schedule makes sense to me. I would say, because it's basically just our current schedule.
Yep.
Projected out to July, August, and September. And I think with a new town manager coming on, this makes sense. I know last year we didn't meet for most,
August,
the
yeah.
entire month of August because Sophie that was her vacation month. And, you know, she was gone for a good number of weeks and we didn't meet at all for 3 weeks, which was a lovely break after having survived budget season, I will say, but I also
Miss you
can,
guys, I'm gonna put that on the table right now.
but I can also see that with a new manager coming on, that's not gonna be probably the schedule we're on and we won't know till they get here. So I feel like it makes sense to put them on the calendar for now. And then if the new manager gets here and it turns out vacation time is August and we get a break, that'll be lovely. But I'm betting there's a lot to come up to speed on for us and them together.
That makes sense.
Manager might like a break, even if he or she is not on vacation.
Right,
Of
Understood.
every
But I-
week is.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Are these meetings hard, Cornell, to organize and stop it? Thank
I feel
you.
like you're
I'm teasing.
Right.
constantly working on agendas.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree entirely. But I feel like until we have a new manager, we don't know. So it makes better sense to leave them there and then cancel them rather than
Thank
not
you.
put them on there, is all I was saying.
All right, so that takes us up to 6:45. So this will be this will be part of our consent agenda at our May 13th meeting. So the plan yep, thank you for that. So at 6:46, Jacob, I don't know if you want to kick it over to Matt, or I'll just let me kick it over to Matt and say, Matt, go for it.
You're on a roll, I'm on the roll.
That's on all the time. So we had 2 responses to the RFP for Performing Arts Festival. And Matt agreed to reach out to the respondents. And Pete, do we have anybody online too?
Well, we do have one of the respondents.
We have one of the respondents out here.
We do have a raised hand online.
Okay,
We do have a respondent online. They just texted me. So I'm
Okay.
looking at my text. So.
So that looks like.
all right,
Zach is on.
Zachary,
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we've had, do you,
please take it.
all right, so we had 2 excellent submissions for running it's gonna be a new name. It's going to be a performing arts festival of some kind. And I've talked to both parties and they're both here, so I'm going to turn it over to them for just a second, but I just want to point out a few things. Mary Jean Sedlock is a employee or professor, I'm not sure what you would say, at University of Maine. And she's sitting right over here. And I want to say that she has extensive experience in running performance arts, both like festivals, almost exactly like this, and also theater art productions, many of these. She also has an MBA, which is helpful in being able to consider how to make this happen financially. And so if you have any questions, please talk to me, or we can send you her application, and I'm gonna have her talk in just a minute. And the other application is from Zachary Fisher and Kayla Gayton, and they are alumni here at the University of Maine. They currently are moving back from Massachusetts, and they also have have extensively worked in making festivals and arts, both music and here in Maine and also in Massachusetts. I think both candidates are highly qualified, and they both are excellent communicators. They are very good at communicating on the phone. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jean and Sedlock, MJ, and let her tell us a little bit about herself real quick and what her thoughts are on this new direction.
Sure. Is this a good spot to stand for Zoom or for anything else, or should I go somewhere in
You
particular?
wanna come up to the table just so people can see you from,
Oh, sure.
There's the dead spot, though. Don't make her sit in the dead spot.
I think I can see myself there, so hopefully it's
it's a
not.
little unsettling, I know.
Yeah. That's okay. I do a lot of Zoom conversations. So Anyway, as Matt said, thank you, Matt. My name is Mary Jean Sedlak, but I do go by MJ typically, so I'd be happy to have anyone refer to me that way. I use she, her pronouns. And I have been teaching at the University of Maine for the past 9 years. It's my 9th year there in the School of Performing Arts. In addition to being a senior lecturer and a professor in the program, I'm also the technical director and production manager for all of the resident produced shows that we do there. So that involves 4 theater shows, occasionally a musical in the mix there, and 2 dance showcases per year. And prior to that, I have an MFA in scenic technology, which is a fancy way of saying technical direction for theater from the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. And then just for fun, really, while I was being a professor at UMaine, I also attended UMaine as a graduate student to get my MBA and graduated in 2020 with that degree, mostly because the arts doesn't have a lot of money, time and resources, and I wanted to do better for my field by knowing more about how to leverage business skills to better use those things to serve the arts. And as Matt mentioned, I have a lot of side jobs over the years in various performing arts fields or festivals. I was the production manager for theater at Monmouth and Opera House Arts, both of which are summer theaters here in the state of Maine. And I was the production manager for the International Performing Arts for Youth, which was a festival in Philadelphia that had its last festival, didn't make it past COVID. So in 2020, but that was 25 theater performances from companies in 12 different countries for over the course of a week in about 8 different venues. And then just this past March, I was the production manager for the Philadelphia Oregon Festival, which was 8 different venues, many of them, 7 of them churches and 1 secular venue, each with a architectural pipe organ in it. And so featuring those pipe organs in different ways. One was a concert of the pipe organ paired with an electric guitar. Another one, a organist improv'd a score for a silent movie. And another one, we had kind of a full ensemble playing alongside with the organ, doing a Bach concert, things like that. And I think that one is particularly nice to highlight in relationship to this because all of those performances were happening in places that are not used to being performing arts venues. They're used to being churches or things like that. And so very much like this festival happening in restaurants and other spaces in town, shops, things like that, where you got to be able to talk to people using a language that's different than the way I might talk to someone in the theater to be able to do those things. So I was able to do that successfully, both the iPay and the Oregon Festival. I did those entirely remotely and then only traveled to Philadelphia for the week of the concert. So I think that highlights the ability to kind of communicate in whatever form the situation requires, in person, on Zoom, on the phone, email, whatever it is. So that's my background. And when it comes to this particular festival, you know, I will not tell you that I've been, you know, sitting back for years thinking about my dreams of running the Arts of Palooza Festival, and would only someone give me the chance. You know, really, it was a couple weeks ago, I saw an application and I thought, well, I got those skills. That seems like a decent amount of money to put it together. You know, maybe that would be a fun thing to do. My husband also works in the theater department at UMaine, and so I submitted this application. I thought it was cleaner to just kind of put myself on the thing as I would be, you know, the lead of it, but I would expect that we would kind of partner in the actual facilitation of it, though most of the management, I would imagine, or the coordination ahead of time, I would imagine doing myself. And I see a lot of potential for taking this festival in the future beyond just what has been a primarily music festival up to this point. I have lots of connections with obviously the School of Performing Arts at UMaine, but also community theaters, True North and 10 Bucks that perform right here in Orono at times, but also Bangor Community Theater, Some Theater, Lace Theater Company, and then other music groups from Bangor, like the Bangor Band. It would be really cool to see the Bangor Band come up here and do a performance in Orono. And then like the Focus Group, which is an improv group in Bangor. I have connections with them as well. And at Opera House Arts, when I worked there, we did a lot of one-off variety acts like jugglers and magicians and other things like that, which I think would be cool, or building on the work that Megan Schneider is doing with her mini grant of those interactive arts workshops for visual art, bringing some of that in. And, you know, like the sky's the limit in terms of taking this from a single evening to a multi-day, multidisciplinary arts festival. Now, as I said to Matt on the phone, that requires the money and to support that, artists should be paid. I should be paid if I'm going to do that work. But, you know, there are ways to let the festival and attendance beget sponsorship, advertisement, and other sorts of funding that would allow that to happen. So, you know, I picture this year being, you know, just trying to keep it going with what it has been, maybe implementing a couple more of those ideas where we can, but really building off of just not letting it go away, you know, and doing something that at least meets what Artsapalooza had done. And then with the benefit of time, having the opportunity to explore all of these connections and other ideas and funding sources and things like that going into the future. So I imagine that's enough for the moment.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from Zach. I think we're online. Could you
Yes, hello. Can you hear us okay?
thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here with my partner Kayla.
Hello.
And we're actually zooming in from Massachusetts. As Matt kind of gave us a little introduction earlier. We are both proud alumni of UMaine and soon to be lifelong Orono residents. We're very quickly moving back to Orono in just a few weeks. And we're excited to put in our application for this. We're both down here in Massachusetts. We've just been working on graduate degrees. Kayla received her graduate degree in vocal performance back in 2022, and I'm finishing mine up, getting mine again just in a couple of weeks. Woohoo! So, and we're just really excited to come back to Orono and you know, again, put in this application for just a wonderful tradition that Orono has. In terms of our experience, I can speak for myself. I am heavily involved annually with the Blue Hill Bach Festival over in Blue Hill, Maine, with just really all of the background logistics of making that week-long festival happen. I'm happy to answer any more questions about that, but that's really my big thing. Also, I should mention, I don't know if this made it into the proposal, but last year I helped the University of Maine Singers. I was the coordinator for their concert tour of Italy and managed all the payments and budgets and logistics correspondence for that. And that had over $250,000 budget that we were working with to make you know, 65 plus college age students and older tour abroad. So those are really the two major pieces of experience I have. But Kayla, on the other hand, I'll let you go ahead on your
Yeah, I can speak a little bit. So I worked at the Collins Center for the Arts for a long time in the marketing department and also as the front of house manager there. Zach also worked there in the box office and as a front of house manager as well. But when I left to get my master's degree, I eventually started working at the Fine Arts Center in UMass as their audience services manager. So I run the front of house operations. We have about 260 to 300 performing arts events that happen just in the academic year. So it's very busy over the course of about 9 months. We're very busy. I run a staff of about 70 student workers. And then when I took it over, they had a major hit to their volunteer base from COVID, understandably. So there was about 10 community member volunteers. And one of the things I'm proudest of that I accomplished here was I grew that base to be about 30 consistent volunteer ushers on top of the 70 student workers that we have as well. So that's my most relevant experience. We're going back to Maine, of course. I'm going back to working at the CCA in the marketing department. So it's cool it was kind of interesting to have this duality of running events and knowing how they work very intricately, helping people to plan them and seeing them from the beginning all the way through, and also having the side of marketing those events and getting people interested and coming along. One thing I also wanted to mention is that we both have been performers in the Artsapalooza Festival in the past, and that was a real call for us to why we wanted to see it continue, because it was such a special part of our time in Orono, and we've also enjoyed going to the festival every summer too, that we've come back to visit. So yeah, I think those are, yeah.
I think that's really been a blessing, is to be kind of on both sides as an attendee of the festival, but also as a performer, and seeing, that from both sides. In terms of our vision for what we see for the festival itself, it's actually pretty in line with what MJ was saying. I think we both have the same idea that, with this current timeline, we don't want to make any huge waves right now. I think it would be looking pretty similar this time around to what we know as the former Artsapalooza. And I think the big thing is, we know Connie, who ran it before. We know her quite well, and I think we would really lean on her, have discussions with her and anybody else who was involved at Stillwater Arts, just to talk about, what worked, what didn't, and sort of preemptively, proactively, work on those issues that, maybe were more challenging about the festival, and just start thinking, I think, about, again, diversifying what kind of acts are there, draws in a bigger crowd, just makes it a bigger, better festival for everyone, and just start having a growth mindset, not only in types of acts, and who's involved, but also, monetarily as well. Different things, grant writing, and I think I put in my proposal letter, perhaps a matching fund campaign, driven by local businesses, so that when people are attending events, if they want to, drop some dollars in the bucket, they know that their dollars are being matched dollar for dollar by outside sources as well, which can really help to incentivize giving. And I think I mentioned in my letter that, given the shorter timeline this year, I think we would be looking, if we were given the reins for this project, we would be looking more for an August date for this summer. But then after that, I mean, we're really open to anything, and just seeing what the people of Orono want to see in a performing arts festival. And after this summer, if we took it on, I think we would just take the rest of the year to just again have that growth mindset of making it bigger and better.
Yeah, one of the other interesting things that we wanted to try to incorporate was this like some sort of large community event, either at the beginning or the end, where people, if it were like a multi-day thing, or even if it were one day, like at the very beginning, kind of a kickoff event in maybe the town square or Webster Park, just to get everybody together, and
right, just
a sense of community.
Just because, and I love Artsapalooza for what it was, but everyone was kind of off going to do their own thing and sequestered in various businesses, and there was no location. You can't cram everybody onto the Woodman's patio or in Pat's Pizza. It's just not going to work. So, but some central location in town where we could kind of just have an opening ceremony or a closing ceremony or something, just to kind of foster that sense of community. That's part of what makes this event so special.
Yeah, that's probably enough talking from us, but we're happy to answer any questions if you have any as well.
First I'd like to do, just to give us some focus, is there will be time constraints on both applications on when they can do this. And so for us, one thing that can help us focus is, as a council, what would our ideal time be? Or do we have an ideal time? Would we want to try and keep it as close to the old time? I think both candidates have struggles in June, so it's not going to be in June, but would we want to see it in July? Do we care about August? Just to give us some focus here.
MJ, in your proposal, you say potentially no later than the first weekend in July. Could you do it later in July? Because that abuts.
Sure, I was, yeah, I can later in the summer is fine. And frankly, I list 3 dates there that I have all day commitments. Only one of those is a Saturday. The other 2 are Fridays. And so potentially it could be that weekend. It just like, I would need to have all my ducks in a row by Thursday to be able to take the Friday before the thing off. So, which is reasonable, I think. So I think with the exception of the one Saturday, the June 15th date, I'm relatively flexible, but later in the summer certainly allows more time for a more robust festival.
And this is
So-
just for this year. This is not going in the future. That would be for a later discussion.
So MJ, you're saying that anytime really from July 1st on is fine and even potentially late June, but preferably early July onward, pretty wide open. And
Yeah.
did I hear Kayla and Zach
You
say
guys are gonna
August?
be moving here, so August is a better date for you, right, Zachary and Kayla?
August is certainly better, but I would say we're definitely flexible. And if a July timeline was more preferable, then we could make that work, certainly.
Usually these discussions, when you're considering responses to proposals, are done in executive session. So this is awkward for us and we're
Yeah.
making this,
Are we making a decision today?
Executive session.
I try and run, 2 festivals. I'd rather run
I know.
2 festivals than, one and have to make, but it's,
Excellent. You guys are excellent candidates is what I want to say. You are both amazing. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for applying. This is just
I think
fabulous.
we may need to have a conversation in executive session for, and which is just where
Yep.
these kinds of decisions get made and we get a chance to talk. I'm really grateful to the respondents
Yep.
and I'm excited about getting one of them done. When would we next have an executive session? Is it May 13th?
Yes, unless you call a special meeting.
Good call.
Let's say.
Yeah.
Just call them and do it.
I think we
Let's
should
just add one to the 6th and then we'll, go in for 15 minutes,
Yeah.
20 minutes, however long it
Yeah.
takes us to do it. Is that?
That would be great.
I do have a
okay.
question for both.
If that's okay with you guys, can you wait 1 week?
Yeah.
Can you guys wait 1 week?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
of
Yep.
course.
I was not, I didn't think you were gonna sit here and vote on us in front of us. Appreciate not doing that. I don't think that's fair for any of us.
Okay.
I'm gonna,
But I had a question, again, both amazing candidates, so
Yeah.
thank you both so much for, all for stepping forward, because it sounds like you have another half as well. So we've kind of stepped into the breach the council has, this has always been a volunteer, and you talked about being paid and how it should work. I'm curious from both of you, if you envision this going back to a volunteer basis with sponsors, or what you would envision, I guess, from taking, just because I think this year is gonna be, you're gonna have some good experience.
Can I answer that? Because I've talked to kind of both groups, just so that I don't have to put them in an awkward position. So both of these, this is what they do for a profession. Connie did not do this. This was not a professional thing for them. And I would not, it would be not professional for us to ask professionals to do what they do for a profession without money. And I don't think that they should answer that question. And I would never make them, we have to decide whether we want to go back to a volunteer thing. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna allow them to answer that question. They are professionals.
That's
They should
interesting.
be paid.
Thank you.
And especially in the arts. Okay, in the arts, a lot of times people ask people in the arts to do things volunteer, but this is what they do for a living. They should be paid. And we will come to that decision as a group, as a council. We're not gonna ask them to answer that question.
fair.
That's how I feel, okay?
But is there a version of Leo's question that is fine about like
Yes.
how volunteers might be involved in it as it grows forward? Because I understand that where we have paid people, if, people are being paid to run it, this is their profession, but presumably there is a role for volunteers in how this grows and gets bigger in this vision you both put forward. So is that something you want to hear about, Leo, or not?
I don't care.
Okay.
It's absurd to me that you just cut off a question.
Oh, sorry.
See, I know Kayla and Zach a little bit from singing in various choirs together, so I mean, it's really great to see you and hear from you. I also, MJ, you've become highly recommended from a number of my contacts in the theater world as well. So really just pleased to hear from all of you. I'm looking forward to having a discussion, figuring out whatever we're gonna have. I think it's gonna be really great.
So we would be able to come out of our May sixth executive session with a sense of the council that we'd have to approve at our May 13th, and by way of an order, you think, Cornell? We haven't done these.
Well, unless you make as part of the special meeting and
Come out in order.
Okay,
vote on
let's
the
do that then. If we can get, let's set that for our goal, that we'd have May sixth, we go in executive session, briefly talk about the proposals and what we learned tonight, and then come back out at the end of that and have a vote that we take publicly. So, okay.
We are a blessed town. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thanks so
All right,
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the move.
Thank you.
All right, so next, so bad. The next item is the public comment policy draft. Jacob, do you want to walk us through any of this, or?
Sarah's probably best since she
Well,
She consolidated.
everybody's thoughts,
Yeah,
but yeah, she is yes.
it all came in an email to all of you. Have you all read the email? And, okay, so really, I mean, you know, the second version that I sent out has, we can just go through it if we want to, starting at the beginning about, you know, any questions and concerns people have.
Is the latest version, the version?
Jump in and
yeah.
see, if anybody has any questions, you're right, we've all read it, so.
I mean, so I guess, you know, I put a version out that has things we had already talked about, and then at the end, you'll see that I added the 3 bullet points in the RSU policy that weren't currently yet in ours. And I know I had some feedback from individual counselors already that I think a certain one is important. So I guess we could look at what we have to start, and then we could take a look at those additional 3 and see if people want them added in.
Is
However
it-
you guys want to handle it.
Is it the one is the most recent version, the one that's linked in the agenda? Or
I would hope so. I haven't opened the agenda when I had it.
It
open.
looks to
Shall
be,
I double
yes.
check it?
Yeah.
I believe so. It says version 2, right? V2. Yeah, that is the most recent one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So I'll jump in, Sarah.
Go ahead.
And so my only question or one of my questions is, when we say that comments against specific people should be directed to, you know, either the chair or the town manager. Do we want, do we want those to be only in writing, or because comments or complaints regarding specific directed via email, phone call, or personal conversation? Do we want to make those specific only in writing, or is that diving too far into employment policy? And
I have no opinion. I literally made this up because you all told me to put something in to tell people where to go. I'm not invested. So really I'd put it out to you guys. I guess because of a little bit of the work that I do volunteer wise outside of council, I would say for some people, depending on your literacy level, putting things in writing is not always something that everybody actually can do. And so I think I would be worried that if it said that, it would disenfranchise people who, you know, weren't able to do that.
makes sense.
We're not able to do it in English and we're comfortable having a conversation. So I'd be a little concerned about that, but beyond that, this is to you guys. I just threw some language in for y'all to look at.
Nope, I hadn't thought about that, so it's fine by me.
The only.
Also, I think Cornell should speak because he would get these sorts of complaints as the town manager. Probably you
Certainly
get them
prefer it
already,
in
so
writing.
you
So
prefer them in writing.
So that it's not misconstrued of what somebody said, but I think it ought to be in writing. It's fine.
So do we want to put in writing?
I don't know, I like what you just. Said that someone. There's some accountability piece that you get from that, I think, but it also is potentially restricting for someone that just may not want to put their name out there. I don't know.
I mean, what do we put? I mean, it's preferred to be in writing, and I don't know how you work that exactly, but comments or complaints regarding specific employees should be directed by email, phone call, or personal conversation with the town manager, with a preference for comments being given in writing, if possible. Which, you know, just leaves flexibility for people who can't, but also emphasizing what would be most helpful for accountability and also just for like ease of process.
So I can simply say email preferred.
Writing for,
that work?
send it in a letter.
Oh, writing preferred. Okay, so
I know, so
letter
I'm
is
joking,
fine. I
I'm
can add
joking, I'm
letter
joking.
via email letter if you want. I
Just
don't
say
care.
written, just say written.
Use the postal service.
Right, I mean, we could start the postal service, so I say okay, so email or written comments preferred.
I guess, yeah, that would go after the bit about if it's regarding the town manager goes to the council chair, right? That would all. You're on the same.
Yeah, I'll draft something to go there. I made a note, thanks.
And same, I think same letter, E, and we had some conversation or emails back and forth about this, but I think emphasizing that grievances against the town about referencing specific employees is permitted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, emphasizing that makes a lot of sense, just so people know what they are still allowed to do.
I
Yeah,
was wondering if you wanted that to go here, or if you wanted that to go in the intro. I looked at there's this intro section before we get around to the bullet points. I did look at the school intro to their policy, and they reiterate this issue around no comments about identifiable personnel twice. It's in their bullet points, but it's also in their intro, where it says, the point of public comment is for you to comment upon the operations and, services provided by the town at a town level and perhaps department level. Our goal here is to avoid comments that would be identifiable to a specific person. So it could either be added to the bullet point, or it could be put in the intro so it gets repeated twice. That's really up to you guys.
I think repetition is helpful because nobody reading this for the first time, no, I don't say nobody. I think the average person, we can't assume anything about what they're gonna retain in any section or what, and I think it's just for clarity's sake helpful to have it in multiple places.
yeah, and in the beginning, it's probably helpful for the chair to be able to kind of have it right there to kind of reiterate that.
We're gonna make Shelley read it out loud, right? Before. No, we're gonna wanna have a hard copy of it, but we're also gonna want pretty abbreviated.
Yeah.
Like these are, be nice,
Right.
Trying to remember the town, the school's part, but
So if you look
it
up,
didn't jump out like you can still file your grievances here
Yeah.
to me.
I can make it clearer than that if you
Yeah.
want. I mean, they
Yeah.
do have a paragraph. If you look up at the school and it's their third paragraph, it says, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the RSU 26 schools, including but not limited to RSU 26 curricula, district administration, governance, and upcoming RSU 26 events. Members of the public may not speak on personnel matters. So I mean, we could add our equivalent that has what you can speak on, what you can't speak on at the beginning, so that it's framed if you
In the
want.
beginning, but I think it here too, because it says no complaints. And you actually can come in section E, that's where it's like. Obviously.
Concerning any it needs to say any identifiable person, right? Any specific identifiable person, that's the point.
Yeah, and then emphasis saying you can come to speak about the town. That's all.
Someone comes and wants to complain about their neighbor. You know what I mean?
Well,
Just-
I don't know if are we responsible for that?
I don't
I
know.
don't,
Same way as like our own.
I don't wanna open a
it's
can
no
of.
employment law issue. I mean,
Yeah.
it's labor law that constricts speech on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we might not like it, but I don't think that's constricted by law.
Okay.
And Leo, our attorney did respond. I had written, did you see, I don't know, who saw that, but so I had written your question, Leo's question, saying, are we clear that complaints about departments and the town are all allowed on that level, just not identifiable
Yeah.
specific employees? And again, the lawyer said, yes, that is correct. Those, so that is our understanding as a council, it is correct.
I will say that the school board has done a lot of, school board chair for sure, and probably school board has done a lot of background on this.
Yeah, a lot.
That was very helpful.
So before we move on from the question about complaining about your neighbor, I mean, if they say something slanderous,
Yeah.
libelous, like, are we, because by the same logic that, we're in charge of this forum, that we are also allowing that speech, or we are responsible for that speech in some sense, does that extend here? I mean, it seems like that would be in some senses, I see how it's related, and also because it's not employment law, it might be under a different legal framework.
I don't think we're responsible, and this is just maybe a stupid example, but somebody complains that their neighbor is leaving a mattress in their front yard. That may or may not be true. It's not up to us to determine whether that's true or
Yeah.
not. So by that logic, I don't think we're responsible, but
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's on its face seems silly if it were a responsibility, but.
yeah.
We have a complaint process for code enforcement, and that's
Yep.
where a lot of these things get
True.
addressed, so.
So the complaint would be against code enforcement not right in theory.
Yeah, and
in theory.
ideally,
Yeah.
you educate the citizen about what the process
Process
is
is,
for them
yeah.
to have, concerns.
I mean, letter D is make no defamatory comments. That really say towards. That's towards anyone, I guess. In theory.
Where we at?
But again, now we're back to limiting free speech. And I think that's-
Speaking of not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use threatening or obscene language or images.
Okay.
Up to you guys.
How do you?
Just
but
put
how
out
do you-
what's there.
That's limiting someone's ability to speak. That's interesting.
Maybe just, I could see they're not permitted to use threatening, obscene language or images, but I don't know, maybe gossip gets into that. People are allowed to gossip. I'm just trying to think of the be nice principle. We wanna, we want people to be nice, so how do we mandate that by a policy? We limit their ability to make defamatory comments or use threatening language.
But take out gossip.
I understand what
I
you're saying,
listed that
Leo,
language
but
directly. I didn't write it, so I'm not attached to anything. Y'all
I
can
don't know what
that one from?
gossip is, but.
That's lifted from the school board policy, exactly. Actually, Cornell lifted that one. It's in black, so I didn't do it. Cornell, we have to start citing. We're gonna get sued for plagiarism.
where did you get that from,
You and
Sarah?
me. I didn't actually lift it, Cornell did, but it comes from the school board policy.
Well, then if yeah,
Doesn't mean we have to use it. That's where it came from.
if it's good enough for them,
I mean, I'm not that worried about that.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I mean, it's. People can be sued for defamation. I mean, it makes sense for us to say, hey, don't do that. That's our policy is don't defame. But, I don't know, I don't think that that's that controversial.
No change on D.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
Okay. I did notice today when I was reviewing briefly before the meeting that in the MMA legal advice on this issue, their number 7 talks a lot about emphasizing prohibiting disruption and disorderly behavior, like to the point that a meeting can't continue, right? That the meeting can't progress. And I don't think we have that language in here anywhere, but I'm just telling you, I mean, that's other language that could be used, I guess, is, disorderly behavior is a legal term to disrupting the
What
meeting.
H was.
Where is H? Is it in here? Thank you. Maybe I missed it. Thank you.
Disruptive
There you
behavior,
go.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's in
Thank
there.
you. I did put it in. It's in red. I lifted that one, Cornell, not you.
Yeah, and I think,
But
I think,
the part where it says that police can remove,
Mhm.
I'm not sure you have to have that in policy, that if somebody's disrupting the meeting, police can take action, whether it's in a policy or not.
Yeah, I think it's probably to protect the chair that they know that they have the ability to ask for police assistance when they need it. It's probably maybe easier for us in town where the police are part of our staff. It's probably even more important at the school level where they're not part of theirs, I guess. But
Leave it
Yeah.
in case, I mean,
Okay.
I wouldn't have any problem exercising it if someone was messing up a meeting, but someday someone might want to.
I think the MMA guidance is really useful here where they, really lay out clearly in their legal advice about the goal is to do the least that's necessary for your meeting to continue and to be sure that we're following the law. So somebody really has to be disruptive to the point that your meeting can't go forward, right? If you can ask them to stop, that's great. If they're just making rude gestures in the back, but everybody can still continue the meeting, doesn't have to be stopped, right? So, the goal is always, our goal is not to limit speech. Our goal is just to be sure that the meeting can go forward and that we're following the law regarding folks' First Amendment rights and also regarding our rights to protect personnel privacy.
Appreciate the work with us, so if we.
Is there anything else or everything
good
else?
to read
Can I
all
ask
the-
about the last 3 points on the last page, which are not currently in the policy? I know Jacob had one you thought you'd like to move in. Do other people want these other 3? These are lifted. And I should have put them probably in a different color. They should probably not be black, but there they are. These are currently, we didn't talk about them last week at all, so
I like number 3, just from a timing standpoint, whether, just as a reminder to people. The other two.
Yeah, but the one thing I was thinking is I would encourage people. But I don't know if you can, but like, if they agree with somebody to just go up to the microphone and said, I agree with the last person. And then sit down so people can see
There's
that there's,
multiple, yeah,
that
no,
there's a
you're
lot
right.
of people who agree with a statement. What I'm worried about is you get one person who says something and then you get this false idea that like
There's only one
there's
person.
only one person who thinks that, and we as a council may not appreciate that, but then again.
Yeah.
I agree with that. We want to encourage them to not duplicate comments, but to be able to stand up. Maybe we can encourage them and say, anybody who agrees with those comments and has nothing else, could you stand up or something? I don't know. We don't have to do that either, but I just don't want it to look like there's one person who says
Yeah.
something when there's
That makes sense.
15 people who agree with it.
I think just discourages allows a lot of flexibility. And in doing so also, I think encourages people to make unique contributions in support or against whatever they're saying, if, you know, hold comes. I also like that this also includes, we request that groups and organizations be represented by designated spokespeople that still can make clear the number of people they represent to show support there is. But I think there's room in there, and it doesn't bind us to anything in particular, or bind people to anything. I mean, I think sometimes it's really nice to have a lot of repetitive comments that still end up speaking to the overwhelming feeling of the community.
Yeah, if it's a feeling, it's people's viewpoint or opinion, I think it's helpful to hear multiples of that. If someone's gonna just come up and say the same thing, you know, the same information,
Yeah.
you know, it's not new information anymore. It doesn't, so.
so where are we at with number 3? Do we want it in the policy or not?
Yeah,
I don't care either way. I agree with both, so.
That's fine.
I'm kind of in the
Like
same
I said,
boat.
it doesn't bind us to anything I disagree with, so.
Leo, yes. All right, that's a yes on number 3. How do people feel about number 1? Number 1, as far as I could tell, primarily is stating that in the school's case, they were stating that this long list of people who were residents, parents, guardians, and or employees are welcome to participate, and others may be recognized at the chair's discretion. So there's sort of a, like, if you're not an Orono schools person, you have to be recognized at chair's discretion. I guess our version would just be Orono residents and employees, and others are recognized at the chair's discretion. Do we want this, or do we just not care whether you're an Orono resident or not?
I like
Or-
it.
You want
I
it?
think it's good.
Okay. And it also has some lines in here about individual employees, and employee groups are not permitted to discuss matters for which complaint or grievance procedures are provided, the same way that the public can't talk about stuff that there's a grievance procedure, a complaint procedure on staff. Employees have a procedure to follow about complaints and grievances, which isn't this meeting. That's fine.
Yep.
Cornell, fine by you, that language? Okay. And then the second one, I don't know, this one says about all speakers are to address the chair and direct questions or comments to other counselors or the town manager only with the approval of the chair.
Can I ask how that would work? Would I like turn to
Technically
Dan
already the case, like,
and say, Dan, can I make a question? Is that how that would-
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I don't care. I think that that's a fine way to do it.
this may technically already be in our
Yeah.
meeting rules in the ordinances, which I didn't go back and look. I think it does say
Yeah.
something somewhere, but
I
I don't
think
know.
that-
Anyway, I don't care either way, but again, I'm just putting them forth to you guys. Do you want it? Do you not want it?
I don't know, it seems kind of unnecessary
This
to me.
wasn't us to them, this was them to us.
Yeah.
Who?
Means like if
This
somebody
is-
wants to talk to you, Matt, they
Someone
gotta
wanted to ask you a question.
Dan.
Okay.
They're supposed to go through Dan, not if we want to ask a question back.
Okay.
Chair.
It seems overly.
I mean, technically, it's Robert's rules, I think, that everything is filtered through the chair. I think it's Robert's rules, which we by default
Yeah.
are supposed to follow. If there's not other rules in our ordinances and charter, we're supposed to default to Robert's rules. So I think this is where it comes from. And by law, in our laws, that's what we're supposed to be following already, but we don't have to put it in the policy if you don't want. I don't care.
I mean, the last thing I want is for us to be, that's not the last thing, there's plenty of things I want less than that, but the last thing I want is for somebody to come up and give a comment and learn like, hey, no, you have to ask Dan first before you can ask
Exactly.
Rob a question. That just seems really silly to me.
Okay, so this one, we're voting no.
Yeah, all right.
Okay,
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, And then you can see at the bottom when Dan was talking about, we need a shorter version of this. This is the RSU short version that goes out on every agenda or whatever. So
I don't like.
I didn't change a thing on
address.
here. I just,
Yeah,
we can't do addresses, we know, because they told us not to do that anyway by MMA. So all we need to say is first name, last name. That address should be gone. And again, I did put the school board's policy in here around capping at 5 minutes automatically unless the chair sets a different limit. So that is accurate to the way we've currently written it.
Yep,
It's a generous amount of time.
this is a lot of time.
This takes a long time.
And we can take out obviously our students about, I mean, I would change this language to be town, but
did I read 3 minutes in some other place?
No.
Yeah,
well, so originally Cornell's version had set 3 minutes and
15 minutes total.
I made it as an example that the town can set whatever, I mean, the chair can set what they want. They can say 15 minutes total, 3 minutes per person, but if they don't set a limit and state it at the beginning, that it defaults to 5.
So you gotta read the room, right? If there's 25
right.
people,
I mean, when there's just a
Yeah.
few people, if Belinda wants to talk for 5 minutes, we probably don't have a problem. But if we want to set that limit lower, y'all can. I just lifted this directly from what was in theirs. All right. Basically, do you like this general short comment and
I
should
do.
I rewrite it to make it be town specific instead of school at the
Yep.
end?
I
You
do.
got the address piece, yep.
I took out the address. Okay, so I'm adding number 1, I'm adding number 3. I am rewriting the end thing and I'm gonna put that written complaints are preferred. And also add language in that Leo's requesting about further emphasis on the fact that comments in general about town operations and performance and services are welcome, just not about specific employees.
Yep.
Is that correct? And I'll bring it back. And when do we want it back?
I think we're ready to vote on it.
I'm ready to vote on it.
Yeah. Put it in the order, no, in order for May 13th.
May 13th.
Yeah.
So get the language done before like a week. When do you need it, Cornell?
Early next week would be good.
Okay.
okay, so before we move on,
Along with.
there is part of number 2 that I did think, it's not necessary that we say it, but I did like request for information or concerns that require further research. Maybe you refer to the town manager to be addressed at a later time. I think maybe that's helpful to just say, so that people know they can have expectations for what can reasonably be done in this meeting. They have something that just like, we don't have the information readily available. Like you can expect that this might take long for that information to come.
So
So add the second part of number 2, just not the first part is your suggestion?
Well, it seems reasonable to help set expectations, but
I was
Okay.
gonna say, it seems like with public comment, I mean, it's not designed that where it's a question answer thing anyway. So I don't know if we're more setting an expectation that, yeah, it is that by stressing that or not, you
no,
know,
that
like,
makes sense.
it historically hasn't been.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd like,
sometimes-
I liked how we did it with Jeff Gordon, though. He had the question about the bins and staff. Mitch came back to us, gave us like within 4 or 5 days and, we put it on tape, as I said. And I like giving people that, we're gonna look into it and get back to you either, we'll talk about it in a meeting or we'll get back to you with an email. I like that approach, but, and
I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna apply to every public.
no, it
comment.
definitely won't. Yeah, if someone's, got a concern about a budget issue and please don't vote for this, please don't do that. That's not something we need to respond to, but if someone has a genuine comment in the public comment period that's not on the agenda, I like the idea of trying to get back to them if they've got, we could be just, case by case, but.
So I mean, I don't feel strongly about that being in writing there. I just thought it might be worth raising before we moved on. If nobody else feels strongly about it, we don't need to keep it in.
I don't care either way. You all decide.
Shelley has added an email address for people who want a response. So when people sign up, if they want to respond, they don't have to provide it, but if they want to hear back from us on their concern, we'll be
Good idea.
in contact.
She's added this to what?
When people at the podium, she'll add a email address for
That
people.
they can write it on.
Yeah,
On the
if
page.
someone's bringing something to our attention that they want a response to, then we can get back to them.
Now, where does that go to? Does it go to the town manager and filter up to us, or does it?
Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, we pass it out however we decide, however council should respond to the comment. So it could be something that goes to a staff member. The mattress on the lawn, contact, or you've got an apartment, then you want to get, why you want to get fiber optic, here's how you do that.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious, like, who initially is like the filter for that? Who's seeing the back end of that
But
email?
we see the email from that comment, and we just know by the end of after the comment, how we feel like we gotta respond to it. We'll decide, I'd work on it with the manager and figure out what's the right way to respond to this person. If it was an open-ended question that, deserved a response.
Okay.
Everybody deserves to be heard. Some things you can respond to, some things you can't.
So you're saying, and apologies if I'm like everybody else there gets this. So you're saying that at the meeting, Shelley would read emails that we've received?
No. So if like when Jeff Gordon talked about the bids, we all have Jeff's email or, we've got it, he uses his contact. But if someone who not known to us came in and said, I have a problem with mattresses on the lawns in my neighborhood, we'd be able to write back to that person after the meetings. This is Pat's contact information. This is the complaint form, whatever the right way to
So
manage
she'd
it.
be collecting that
So we can respond.
information.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I thought you were saying we were setting up a separate email address for people to send in their comments. And I was like, well, who?
Yeah, no,
What?
we read them and respond to them as we can.
Great, thank you.
R.Lairway@orono.org.
There we go.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, so just so for my clarity here, I'm back to, we're adding 0.1, we're adding 0.3, we are not adding 0.2, not any part of it.
That's right.
Is this correct in my notes? Okay, I'm on it. Early next week, Cornell.
Unless you want everybody to see it another time, May 6th.
I think we can look at it by email.
May 6th, we can look at an email, we can vote on the
You can
13th.
pull it off the consent agenda if you have a concern about specific language. Yep.
Okay,
All right,
and Leo, I can send you what I draft, because on that language specifically to look at.
all right. We did the council meeting schedule and now the mini grant application for Jeff Owens. You know that one too, Matt?
Yeah, so Jeff Owen is asking for $1,000 to run a multi-sport event, but it has some things that we're juggling that are up in the air with this. Most of it could probably just be done. But part of this multi-sport event would be running, would be cycling. And then there would be an event that would happen in the Stillwater, and he's proposing an event that would be, canoeing, but also swimming. And so with the swimming comes a lot of extra safety. And so he was asking whether it would be possible and what the expense would be to have the fire department have a boat with a couple of rescue people in the water for 3 hours, along with paying for a few lifeguards. And so that expense kind of will dictate whether we can do that or not. And whether he's willing to expend, because it's probably gonna be way more than $1,000. And so we're just waiting for the fire department to let us know how much that look like.
Oh, I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
$444.99.
Oh, that's it?
So boat for 3 hours,
Two
pickup truck and
firefighters.
trailer, 2 staff costs for 2 firefighters for 3 hours.
Sorry, I totally missed that.
Yeah.
So much cheaper than I was anticipating.
But it also needs to be, Chief Lowe pointed this out to us, so just
Okay.
to,
Yep.
it should be understood that we are not trained lifeguards and will not enter the water
Yep.
to affect the rescue of a person
Okay,
who is unable to grab a rope or flotation device. We will do
Alright.
everything possible to get them in the boat, but we will not dock our PPE, so.
okay,
And
so
there'll
we
be
were-
3 lifeguards
we
there
were
as well that he's paying for.
pretending 4 lifeguards.
4 lifeguards plus
on
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
boat.
Yeah.
That, and so I calculated that out that would be,
Couple hundred.
yeah, it'd be like three or so. So this could fall under this mini grant. And so thank you, Cornell. I'm sorry I didn't see that.
I presume that people will be signing waivers before they do
Yes,
this.
yeah. And Jeff Owen has run many
Yeah.
race
Yep.
events, and he has run camps, paddle camps, where you have to have these forms out. So he is very capable, very competent, and also is good at letting the community know about this event. And I think it'd be a great event, and there's a cadre of other people behind him, because there used to be events sort of like this in Orono, and those all fell by the wayside during COVID. And so this group of people is interested in getting something like that started again. And so this would be one way to get that over. So
I like it. Could be a good,
Yeah.
initial investment, and if it takes off and
Yeah,
it becomes self-sustaining.
great.
Is there a date for this event yet?
I
I don't,
August.
yeah, it was gonna be in,
For some reason.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I don't have it off the top of my head either. I'm sorry. It was late July or
Early
August.
August.
Can we just make sure it doesn't happen the same time as the performing arts festival? Well, actually,
It happens
they
at
were
day and that
thinking-
happens at night. And
Maybe.
it's
Yeah.
a huge
That was
weekend-long
one
festival.
of the ideas
It'd be a
too.
pretty
would
big
be
festival,
that We
right?
could do the race part kind of in the, yeah.
Oh, all right.
in the
It'd be okay to combine them.
Not election day though. Can't do.
No.
you
Not
can't leave
election.
the election days. All right. So is this extends to the council to fund this for 1,000?
And I
It's
assume
gotta be
they,
the end of our money, right?
that's what I'm asking.
So just, I have the list in front of me, and I
Thanks.
believe that you're at 9 before this one.
Exactly 9?
If you, yes, so you had the succulents, you have the biology, the secret garden at the school.
Mhm.
You have the, what's this one? Orono Monday through participants, that is,
The yoga one and.
Yeah.
And food one.
yes, the volunteer group, oh, that's the geezers with sneakers.
Yeah.
The potluck singer group.
They're
that you
coming.
have.
That's right. This Sunday potluck
Uh,
with folk dancing.
You have the yoga, you have the school lights.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have the, I'm trying to
Yes.
read this as not the best, I apologize. High school, that is
So assuming we have the money, I'm in support.
Yeah.
active arts in the community.
Whatever
Yeah.
we have
Funded
left.
contingent on fund availability and rate
And
up.
then launch pad, so I think you are at 9.
Okay.
Exactly.
That was the We Pace murals, right?
Yeah, we pay Smurfs.
All right, so let's,
So you're at 9 before this one.
Okay,
So this is it.
This
If
would
it
be
comes
it.
in at the
That-
full 1,000,
yeah,
it
yeah.
actually sounds though it's gonna be
be a
under
little,
from what.
it'll be,
you're
it might be a
describing.
little bit under for
Sounds
this
like probably
part
more
of
like
it,
800
so.
or 700.
okay.
I ask only because I heard about one other person with an idea that's pretty cheap for June. So we'll get a figure and what this comes in at and then we'll know.
He may have other expenses too, though, right?
Yeah,
He
there's always,
specifically said he was asking for it
For-
only for this though,
this
for
is
the
mostly for the
lifeguard.
lifeguards and. Yeah, and the people in the water.
Did he say only for that though, or are we just saying 1,000 and using?
It
us
was
as you
a
want,
little
is my
ambiguous
question.
because he also talked about, well, if the police, if there was some direction, and I was like, I don't think we'll have police directing traffic,
Yeah.
and then we
Okay.
discussed about having it maybe be at Orono Bog, the one part and the other the still water, and then we wouldn't have to.
So
worry
Matt, can
about-
I just suggest that
Uh-huh.
you get this figure back from the
Yep.
fire department to him about what this
I
will
will.
cost? And you ask him for a figure on what the
Yep.
lifeguards are going to cost and that we add those up
So,
and fund that
why don't
unless
we
he
fund
comes to
that?
us with something else, because I don't really like the idea of just saying money for whatever.
No,
All the other ones have
why
been
don't
kind of
we-
specific about like, this is what it's for.
Why don't we?
But if you
We
think,
haven't done really a accounting with anybody else.
no, but they've just put it in. It's been like, this is what it costs, but I think it's 1,000.
I think most of them were guesses.
And I'm fine.
All right.
Great. It's,
All right,
it
1,000.
says Leo, it's 1,000. We're
All
good.
right,
Thanks,
and then
Leo.
we're done.
So we're saying 1,000? Is that what you
I
just
guess,
did?
yeah.
These
it's
are
pretty-
Yeah.
conversation. Okay, $1,000 pending that we have the $1,000 left.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds good.
anything else for,
I just want
Yes.
to bring up,
Yep.
there's been requests for us to
Yep.
promote the
Events
mini
on.
grants with, but they're private businesses going on our website, so.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That was partly a mistake on my part, and so we have to know, go ahead.
Yeah, explain to us.
well, are you okay with us having Pete put promotions for the mini grants that are, they are private businesses that are doing the grants on the town's website?
Part of
the
what we did
reasons
before-
we,
Yeah,
Part of what we did before was they would provide something.
Right.
So Facebook, something, and we would share it. So it's not our event.
Yep.
Right? It's,
Yeah.
it's somebody else. So
Yeah.
that's typically how we've done it in the past. So it's not us creating anything. It's just
Yeah.
they've done something and we've shared it. So this would be a departure from that. That would be putting something on the town website.
that was, so the genesis of that was with a succulent because she broke her foot and was down having surgery, and so I was trying to help Herb, and I was also, because I don't know how to do some things, I asked Pete, so that was my fault that happened. And we do not have to have that ever happen again, so that was my fault, that was.
Can we censure
Yeah.
council power? Should I make those?
Yeah.
It's all on the agenda, so it's not like a big, we don't have to spend a lot of time debating it, but.
This won't be my first mistake, and it won't be my first mistake tonight. I apologize, Leo, for cutting you off. That was my mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should not have done that.
So we're not gonna do that again, is what we got out of that. Is that what I got? Correct. Okay.
I love that you tried to help somebody though.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of the spirit of mini grants, so.
So we can make sure that doesn't happen again.
And while we're at it, there are succulents to be delivered on May Day. So anyone who wants to do that, you can go to it. And there's a potluck this Sunday with live folk dancing from, I can't remember all the name of the countries.
Yep.
So-
And Holly's having an event this Saturday.
It's amazing.
There you go. There's a lot of mini grant stuff this month, so
Keith Anderson.
watch the neon sign.
Cornell, anything else from you for the manager's report?
Yes, wanted to update you on the pool.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we signed a contract, or both parties have signed a contract back in March. They have a 4 billing system, down payment and first payments. We've paid 2 payments. They've assigned a project manager. They've had project review. They anticipate being early June is all they have. It's estimated to take 2, perhaps 3 weeks of work. And then the pool will be filled. Takes 2 days to get the water balance, chemicals right, and then there'll be a day of training lifeguards in the deep end. I gotta believe it's wicked cold. So you don't have a heated.
They're paying those kids good.
Oh, I was told that there used to be a wood fire.
Wow,
Seriously?
I did not know that.
Did you know that?
He didn't, you know, he's no longer.
Biomass.
Paid for it out of the TIF.
Pool heater.
Wow,
That's awesome.
it's impressive.
Alright,
So,
Yeah, so that's all I have. Do you have a question about that?
and so after that week and the lifeguards, then it'll
And then it
open.
opens.
So
We'll
do
be
you,
ready to go, so.
end of June, early July, early July?
For,
What's that?
so by the end of June, it should be.
Nice.
Probably looking at right after the 4th.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yes.
that's awesome.
That's perfect.
By the 4th, okay. That's great.
Anything's possible at this point, so just be careful, it's construction.
Yes, I know. This is the tentative schedule.
So, yep.
Great, thank you.
The only thing I wanted to share is that the April 3rd, tomorrow here, there's the Union Street Boat Launch Community Meeting that Megan is, Masala has put together, and it sounds like she's got a great plan, so I'm really eager. That's been shared with the folks in the neighborhood, and the Foundation has been reached out to, and I'll follow up with another email on that, but fantastic work on that, so
Can
thank
you
you.
share that out with all of us?
Yep.
So we know what that looks like.
I will.
I do have one other thing.
Sure.
Keith Lowe resigned this afternoon.
So,
His contract is up, the end of June, and he's not going to renew.
okay, you update us on
The search updates.
how you will, well, you don't know yet,
That'll be for the next
yeah,
manager.
but I mean, you will have leadership and, there's. I will
Do
talk
we have an
about it.
executive session? Should we have an executive session to discuss this or no? Is it, I'm just one,
Yeah.
be careful about what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna go into any detail, I just wanted to, but, okay,
I guess less, but it's important. This Wednesday, on the 1st at 6:30 will be the first meeting of the comprehensive plan committee,
oh, great,
That's great.
so.
And that's here.
That's gonna be here in the council chambers,
What time from?
at 6:30.
And the public's always invited to all of those meetings, is that correct? So public to know.
but did anybody have anything else, Quinn, do you have anything else, that was, Sarah?
I just have a search committee update. So we're a week out from the finalists being here, a week from tomorrow. So that's coming really fast. The logistical planning is a lot, but Cornell's really helpful. Staff is really helpful. Alyssa's really on top of things too. So hopefully things are moving forward apace. I have a lot of spreadsheets going, tracking all those moving pieces. But if there's something you're especially concerned about or want to know about that day that you haven't heard yet from me, please reach out. I heard from Melissa today that council needs to prioritize their interview questions. You were each charged with your interview questions to put them in order from your top question you want to ask first to the one you want to ask last. So you all need to do that. And she didn't put a date originally when she told us, but I'm telling you now that she wishes she already had it. So by Wednesday, no later than Wednesday.
Yeah.
You all need to have those into her. Okay?
I was gonna say, if anybody's thought of anything that Sarah hasn't already addressed, I would love to hear it.
There are too many color-coded spreadsheets at my house right now.
He's good.
You all set? Okay. Pete, we don't have anybody with their hands up, right?
We do not have anyone with their hands up at this time.
I guess we'll adjourn this committee meeting and thank you, everybody. Point out that I got a bunch of stuff done right on time and then.